This video, among other things, is going to cover the Battle of Austerlitz. If you know, you know. If you don't, let me give you some context. If you think back to your history classes in high school, there's a chance you might remember mention of the Holy Roman Empire. This was an empire that was formed around 800 CE, and it lasted for about a millennium. It was formed just a few centuries after the Prophet Muhammad walked the earth, and it predates the existence of the printing press, the button, and gunpowder. Because of the HRE's association with the Catholic Church, and thus a divine right to rule, it dominated the geopolitical landscape of the European continent for most of its existence. The empire was wide-spanning, and it didn't actually have one capital, but by the 18th century it had consolidated around Vienna, which made Austria the most important territory in the entire empire. In its later years, the Holy Roman Empire had already started to decline due to a variety of factors, like incest. But if you asked historians what was the thing that finished them off, what was the coup de grace that brought an end to the empire that lasted for 1,000 years, they will point you to this battle. In the morning of December 2nd, 1805, Russian and Austrian forces engaged with Napoleon's army, and they vastly outnumbered the French forces. By the afternoon, they had suffered roughly 30,000 casualties, 3 to 4 times as much as the French side. A few weeks later, Austria officially withdrew from the war effort, and 6 months later, Emperor Francis abdicated from his throne, and thus the Holy Roman Empire dissolved. Because of that aforementioned connection to the Catholic Church, a lot of people heard about this and truly, actually thought it was a sign of the end of the world. And considering we're going to cover that earth-shattering topic in this section of War and Peace, it feels only fitting that Chapter 1 of Book 3 of this novel begins with Prince Vasili, the old scoundrel, trying to get more money! Welcome back to War and Peace. This book has everything. Today we'll be sampling Wild Irish Rose, Wild Fruit with Ginseng. This was on clearance at the grocery store, and I feel like I'm going to find out why. I know my limits, but I'm curious, am I going to drink this whole thing this video? Because it's not like a whole bottle. Let's just see what happens. Ooh, that's like communion wine. And that's not a compliment. I like how I said it's not a whole bottle. Like, it's technically a whole bottle, but just the bottle is a smaller size than like a typical bottle of wine. That's what I meant by that. It's technically a whole bottle of wine, I guess. All right, we are headed back to Moscow this episode, which means we're going to briefly go over some of the things here. Most notably, we have Pierre. He's, again, kind of the closest thing we have to a main character, although there's several characters that I think all kind of have that role. He just inherited all his money from his dad, who was old and rich. I should change that real quick. I can actually write upside down pretty well. Writing sideways, that is a different story. Holy shit, that looks terrible. Dead. He's not old and rich, he's dead and rich. He's technically not rich anymore either, because Pierre has all the money now. So I guess he's just dead. But Pierre is now Count Pierre. He's the head of the Bezikov household and estate and all of its money and properties. That's going to be relevant for our first couple of chapters here, because he's also still hanging out with Prince Vasili down here. This is the guy who was really hoping he could get in Count Cyril's will and didn't quite make it. But he has ingratiated himself to Pierre, and he's been like, look, I'm on the lookout for you. I'm hanging out with you. There was kind of a war between him and Anna Mikhailovna over who would kind of win Pierre over, and Pierre was like not quite smart enough to realize all the politicking that was happening, so he was just kind of along for the ride. But now Anna Mikhailovna has gone back to hanging out with the Rostov family, who, like, Pierre kind of interacts with sometimes, but it's not like always hanging out with them. Whereas because Pierre, until very recently, has not really known what to do with his life, he's actually been hanging out at Prince Vasili's house. So the two of them are still hanging out a lot, even though Vasili kind of lost the big battle of schemes that happened in book 1. We get a really fun analysis of what Prince Vasili's deal is. Tolstoy basically writes about how Vasili's never like consciously, actively trying super hard to get super rich. He just kind of happens to always fall into conversations that might involve his family getting richer, and he kind of happens to always say just the right thing that makes other people think like, oh yeah, maybe I should, hear this guy out and hear what he has to say. He just so happens to put himself in the exact circumstance and say the exact right thing to help him with his social climbing tendencies. It's a very similar, Tolstoy loves this, it's very similar to, it's been a while since I've read Anna Karenina, but I believe Stepan Arkadyevich he's like one of the first characters you hear about in that book. And I remember it always standing out to me. It helps that I took it as part of a class, so I had a professor to explain to me all this. But the kind of willful ignorance of, you simply wouldn't do all of these things if you didn't know that what you were doing was shitty. But you can kind of trick your brain into thinking, oh, it's just a coincidence that everything I do serves only me and is a little bit shitty. That it just kind of happens naturally. It's not because I'm actively conniving and I'm actively backstabbing people. That's kind of Prince Vasili's deal. And yeah, the willful ignorance is something Tolstoy is fascinated with. That idea of people can trick themselves into thinking they're not bad people because all the bad things they do are just kind of like a mixture of human nature and coincidence, which we've already gotten the vibe of, but there's a really just fun breakdown of everything that Prince Vasili is up to. Most notably, in this section, he's really trying to marry off all his children, except Hippolyte. He doesn't give a shit about Hippolyte. He's mentioned like once in this whole section, and I'm almost positive he's not already married, but I guess Vasili's just kind of given up on him. But yeah, it's not told in first person, but you can tell this chapter is kind of told from Vasili's perspective in a really interesting way, because you read it and you're like, oh, this is clearly a guy conniving and trying to get all the money that he can, but it's always presented in this way of like, oh, it just so happened that this happened, and Vasili was actually being very nice and polite when he decided to do this. So, like, among other things, he goes, all right, Pierre, I know there's a lot of paperwork involved with being an account. I'll handle all the paperwork. There's a bunch of like extra money flying around. I'll look after that and just make sure that, you know, it doesn't get lost or misused. Here's all the balls you need to hold at your estate so that you can meet the right people and talk to the right people and everyone won't be disappointed with you. Here's all of the money that it might be nice if it goes to Katish. If it just so happens that she gets the money and realizes, oh, maybe I should stay quiet about all that scheming I did instead of coming forth with it and humiliating Prince Vasili, and, you know, maybe I stay hush because of this money. That's just coincidence. As Pierre is getting used to, like, high society, there's also this really interesting, like, funny way of him looking around, and now all of a sudden, because he's super rich, everyone thinks he's super important. Everyone keeps treating him nicely and kindly, and everyone keeps like telling him how sad they feel for him that his dad is dead, even though like Pierre and his dad had a nice moment right at the end, but like they had an estranged relationship for the majority of their life, and Pierre is actually like, he's gotten over it pretty quickly, but everyone keeps like saying, hey, actually you feel sad. You feel sad, and we feel bad about how sad you feel. Everyone constantly considered it a duty to assure Pierre that he was greatly afflicted by the death of the father he had hardly known. And like the sad thing is, he's like too gullible to understand why this is happening. He's just like, oh, suddenly, coincidentally, people like me. And he doesn't even make the connection that it's because, oh, it's because you're rich and you're officially part of the nobility now. You're part of the club through no action of your own. There's a funny thing where it was like, he used to go to parties and he would say something that he thought was really clever and no one would laugh. And then Hippolyte would say something super stupid and everyone would laugh. And now all of a sudden, he's saying the same sorts of things at parties, but everyone's laughing now. And he's like really confused as like, why? But it was funny last time I said this joke. Why does everyone else only think it's funny now? Anyways, among all this high society stuff, they eventually, Vasili and Pierre both eventually go to another party held by Anna Pavlovna. We heard about her from the very first chapter. She's been in several chapters, but we first met her right at the beginning because she is a fellow schemer with Vasili. Wow, they're falling over all over the place today, aren't they? They've actually been working together on a scheme that we're going to follow up on a little bit later in this book. But for now, Vasili and Anna Pavlovna are working together to try and get Pierre married to good old Helene down here. As a reminder, Helene is one of Vasili's only daughter, one of his 3 children. She is hot and a hedonist. She's not straight up evil, but also by like, the readership of the novel would have seen this and be like, oh yeah, Helene's not great people. Vasili's really hoping that he can pull this marriage together, just because it would be nice if the Kuragin and the Bezukov families, who have been in such a close relationship, were able to, you know, unite their bonds in this official way. And not at all because it would allow Vasili access, even more direct access to half of Pierre's fortune, which is what he kind of wanted in book 1. Total coincidence. Completely different thing happening here. Anyways, Vasili and Anna Pavlovna basically maneuver things in such a way that Pierre and Helene are kind of forced to hang out together. Helene is like, her perspective isn't really given too much in this book, but it's pretty clear, like, she's also in on the plan and she's here for it because, I mean, she also gets a lot of money. Anna Pavlovna says, hey, go talk to my old aunt, Pierre and Helene, and, like, along the way, she's like, by the way, Pierre, isn't Helene super hot? Look how hot she is. Yeah, you probably thought there weren't any hot women at my party, but look at that one. And Pierre's like, I guess we've kind of like grown up in the same circles, and I kind of already have my preconceived notion of who Helene is, and she seems kind of dumb and not really like great, but like I guess she's pretty, yeah. And they're basically forced into a room together with this old lady. There's times where I think Tolstoy actually would have really loved to be a filmmaker if he had been born like a century later, because you can tell he envisioned something, and if it was just like in a film, it would take like 3 seconds, but he wants to make sure that the reader understands exactly what he's envisioning, so he takes like 3 paragraphs to describe what's going on, because he really wants to sell this slapstick moment of Pierre is sitting here, and Helene's sitting here, right next to him. And then the old lady I mentioned sitting all the way over here. So 1, 2, 3. Old lady, who I don't think is part of the scheme, but it's also like, okay, well, these 2 young people are hanging out. I suppose I'll just give them the time of day. They're just all making kind of small talk conversation. And she's over here, and she's got this cool thing that I'm representing by the deck of cards because it's just what I had over here. She's like, look at this cool, it's like a miniature art piece, like a little carving of something. I'm not entirely sure exactly what it is, but she has like a little tiny thing. And she's talking, and it's very clear that her plan is, I'm going to give this to Pierre. I'm talking to Pierre. I'm going to hand it over to Pierre so he can take a look at it. Again, this takes like 2 seconds in actuality, but the text of the book has to set the stage for everything, so it's in very explicit detail. She's about to hand the thing over. Pierre's over here. He goes, oh, she's about to hand the thing to me. All right, let me lean over like this, and he thinks the pass-off is going to happen in front. And remember, Helene's right here. Pierre's here, reaching over. Old lady, over here. Helene's here. Old lady's here. She is thinking differently, so she reaches this way, across the back. And Helene, sitting right here, sees what's going on, sees, oh, she's reaching around the back. Also, Helene is Helene, and she's part of the plan, so she knows exactly what she's doing.
She knows exactly what she's doing.
She goes, oh, old lady's coming this way. She leans forward so that the old thing can be passed around here. And what that implies, it's stated very explicitly, Helene's leaning over. Old lady's over here. She's no longer relevant to the scenario. Helene's here, leaning over. Pierre's here, leaning here. Pierre's face, tits, right here. Just inches away. And then Pierre gets the thing and comes back and he's like, what the fuck was that? Again, so many paragraphs of text just to sell this one little slapstick moment, and also like keeping in mind Pierre is in his 20s, single, doesn't really know exactly what love is and if it's for him. So this moment of just Pierre here, tits here, is literally the moment where he goes, oh, Helene is really hot. I hadn't really actually consciously thought about it, but oh boy. And you'd think, like, if this were put into like a modern movie, I think a lot of audiences would see it and be like, they just added that in to be gratuitous. But no, it's very explicit. The text mentions her low-cut dress, her bust. It's very clear. Pierre just gets a real good look at the goods and goes, oh, uh-oh. And here's how pure Pierre is it's like purely like a sexual thing of like, oh, I'm attracted to this woman because I saw her boobs and I'm recognizing that she's really hot. But that doesn't turn into any like carnal thoughts. It just immediately turns into like, so maybe I should marry her and maybe I'm going to spend the rest of my life with her. And the implication is that like, that's the only train track that Pierre's brain is on. It's just like, oh, I'm attracted to someone. Not going to worry about kissing them or sexing them or anything like that. Just like, I guess marriage is probably next, right? That seems like the next thing that happens.
Because you saw my titties.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that Pierre's also, he remembers what he thought of Helene 5 minutes ago. And he's aware of like, I don't know if we're like a perfect fit. I still think she's not like super clever and she seems like really selfish. But this is just what should happen next after that moment we had of Pierre. You can't even think about like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? It's literally just like a weird inevitability of like, well, we're probably going to get married now. It's so interesting and strange and silly, and I love it. The description of the quote is also really interesting because he says, having once seen this, he could not help being aware of it, just as we cannot renew an illusion we have once seen through. That's him realizing, oh, I've grown up with Helene my entire life, but only now am I realizing how hot she is. It's not the thing of like, oh, we see something and it becomes more impressive or cool. The metaphor is, oh, we recognize something is an illusion, and then we can't unsee the illusion anymore. The magic is actually lost a little bit rather than improved, I think is a really interesting way of communicating the metaphor here. He also keeps having like second thoughts of like, okay, well, it's also weird because like I'm kind of drinking buddies with Anatole and Hippolyte, so this might be a little weird vibe with them. I'm living with Prince Vasili, might be a weird vibe if I'm with him, because Pierre has no idea that Vasili is hoping for this to happen. He's also like, didn't Didn't I hear that Helene and Anatole were, like, a little Lannister-y for a while there? That doesn't feel great. She's really fucking hot, though. So as Pierre is kind of thinking about all this and trying to figure out exactly where his life is going to go from here, that's where we leave the chapter. In chapter 2, we cut forward a little bit. Helene and Pierre start spending a lot more time together, which it's helpful that, like, Prince Vasili and Pierre are living in the same household, which implies that, like, they're all just living in the same house. They start spending more time together. It's clear that they're, like, in the courting, like, stage of the relationship. But Pierre's terrible at courting, and Helene is just kind of sitting there waiting for things to happen. Vasili also kind of sitting there waiting for things to happen until he realizes, I can't just wait, because Pierre's not going to fucking do anything unless I do something first. So eventually he realizes that Helene's name day is coming up as a reminder that's kind of essentially like a birthday. We're going to set the entire stage, working with Anna Pavlovna again, to just be like, here's everything that's going to happen. Bring in a couple of guests to the household. It's going to be a pretty small party, small vibe, and we'll just make sure Pierre and Helene are together for the entire night. We're just going to set the chemistry, set the vibes, turn the lights down low, set up all the candles, bring out all the wine. But like, because there's still some nobles here who have to be there, almost all of whom are aware of, like, this is the night Pierre's going to propose to Helene. It's going to happen. They're kind of like making small talk about Sergei Kuzmich, who we don't even get a lot of details of exactly what his deal is. He's like a military guy who's involved in the war. Everyone just kind of keeps bringing up the name, but there's not a lot of specifics about like what the story is, because that's just, it feels like they all got together and it's just like, okay, whenever we need to just like make small talk in order to force Helene and Pierre to interact more, we'll just bring up Sergei Kuzmich. We'll just keep talking about him, and hopefully that'll like bore Pierre enough that he'll focus all on Helene. Unfortunately, Pierre is Pierre, and he keeps wanting to find out more about this Sergei guy, and no one's giving him any information. He's like, I feel like I'm being left out of something, guys, and everyone's like, shut up, just talk to Helene already. Eventually, everyone withdraws, and then Pierre and Helene are just left completely alone in the drawing room, and everyone's just kind of waiting. Prince Vasili is there with his wife, who I forgot he had. I don't think she's mentioned at all in book 1 or book 2. Aline or Aline is mentioned, but that's probably also a nickname. It might be Caroline. I don't know. I don't think she was brought up before here. I don't know if she's ever brought up again, but she's here, and she's all, you get the vibe of like, she doesn't really want to be part of Vasili's schemes, but she kind of has to be because she's part of the Karagan family. Anyways, they're waiting outside the drawing room being like, okay, Pierre's gotta propose. All the stages have been set. Surely even he knows this is the time when you're supposed to be proposing. And Pierre is thinking to himself of like, okay, feels like I should propose. This feels like proposal time. But it just doesn't seem like a great idea. But she's so fucking hot. But the incest, though. But like, he's like really struggling. He's still super anxious about the entire thing. And so he keeps just going, so Elaine, hear about the Sergei Kuzmich guy? You know what that's about? And Helene, again, part of the plan, but not doing a very good job of like actually contributing, is just sitting there going, I've heard of him. Anything else you want to talk about? Nah, I think I'm good. And so this just keeps going. Vasili eventually gets his wife and is just like, could you look in there and see how things are going? The wife walks by, like peeks in the room, just goes, same thing, same shit. It's been happening for hours. And so eventually Vasili just goes, okay, I can't make Pierre propose. But what I can do is pretend like my wife lied to me. And so Prince Vasili walks into the drawing room and says, my wife said you just proposed. Congratulations, guys. I'm so excited. This is going to be so great. And Pierre thinks that there's just some sort of weird misunderstanding happening. But basically, he's on board with this because he is aware, oh, I should be proposing to Helene. And I just don't have the guts to do it because it feels weird and I'm having second thoughts and I don't know how I feel about this. But if everyone just says I propose, now I don't have to do it, and we just keep moving forward, again, he kind of feels this inevitability. He feels like he's in a weird spot where he doesn't feel like there's anything he can do to stop it. So honestly, the fact that even more is being taken out of his hands, he's like, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, we're engaged now. It's official. Even though there was no proposal, they are now engaged because Vasili just decided, get me the fuck in there. I'm making it happen. It's true. I'm making it truth. Maybe the most direct form of quite literally manifesting your dreams I have ever seen. Helene immediately starts making out with Pierre, which from Pierre's perspective, we hear is unpleasantly exciting, which is such an interesting way to phrase that of like, oh, I am excited because she's really hot and we're kissing now. I still feel weird about this. I still don't love it. So I love that phrasing of unpleasantly excited. But Vasili apparently has had enough of waiting, so it's basically the next sentence says, and then they got married, probably because Vasili rushed it along, and they immediately started living in the Bezukov household, which means Pierre is finally moving out of Prince Vasili's house and into the Bezukov household. But now Prince Vasili has his daughter in there, helping keep a grip on things and making sure the Kuragin family still has access to all of Pierre's funds. That's it for chapter 2. So things are looking good for Prince Vasili. The ball is rolling up. So he's thinking, I'm on a roll. I already got this marriage that I really, really want. What's Anatole up to? Maybe I can get him married off. Let's start working on that. Because even if he had access to the entire Bezukov fortune, it wouldn't be enough because Vasili wants money. They're saying Prince Vasili isn't a real businessman. His life is just hours and hours of coming up with shit schemes and hitting pay dirt. They're saying it's impossible that this many people want to marry into the Kuragin family, and it's impossible that every single one of them would be lucrative for the Kuragins. I don't know what to tell you, man. Vasili's just arranging marriages and finalizing the ones where the money comes flying out. He didn't rake shit. He didn't do shit. Anyways, for no particular reason, Prince Vasili has decided he wants to pay a visit to good old Prince Nicholas from the Bolkonsky family. He's just so happening to bring his son Anatole along, who's an eligible bachelor, and Prince Nicholas just so happens to have a daughter, Princess Mary, who we've briefly met. This is Andrew's sister. In fact, I'm bringing this up as if it's a brand new thing, but the idea of Anatole marrying Princess Mary was actually brought up in the very, very first chapter. This was what Prince Vasili and Anna Pavlovna were planning to accomplish in the first couple of chapters in terms of their social maneuvering. Old-timey novels are so weird sometimes because you think of modern stories, the first scene is usually either like a perfect tone setter or it introduces something about the protagonist or the antagonist of the entire book. And I think we meet Pierre in the first chapter, but he's not given a lot of focus. Or it's the thing that kickstarts the entire plot that happens in the very first chapter. And not really in War and Peace. We just hear of like, oh yeah, Anna Pavlovna decides to throw a party so that Prince Vasili can marry his son Anatole off to Princess Mary. In fact, that party was literally just so that they could talk to Andrew to, in the future, potentially bring this up. And now they're finally trying to bring it up. And spoilers, this is not the main plot of the novel either. This is just another side thing. And it's so interesting that like that's how we start the book, is just Prince Vasili is trying to get more money. That's not the reason the book is being written. It's not connected to any major moral. It's just social climber's going to social climb, and he's just going to keep thinking about all these schemes. And now he's finally following up on one by bringing Anatole with him to go meet with Nicholas and potentially see what Mary's up to. Is she still eligible? Is she still doing okay? Nicholas, as a reminder, is cranky and eccentric. Emphasis on the cranky in this section. He hears that someone is coming to visit him. I don't think he really even cares that it's Prince Vasili. There's a little bit where it's like, oh, that fucker. But the fact that anyone is here to visit him, like he wakes up and he sees, oh, the snow's on the roads. And then the servant comes up to him and is like, oh yeah, we're shoveling all the snow off. And he's like, great, if I want to go into town, I can go whenever I want. And the servant's like, oh, and also the guy who's going to visit you today is coming. And Prince Bolkonsky goes, what the fuck? Put the snow, take those shovels and put the snow back on the road. I don't want any fucking visitors today. And the servant goes, yeah, sorry, that was so silly of me to shovel the snow off of the roads. I'll go fix that real quick. They can hear the way that Nicholas is stepping when his heels are like straight against the floor as he's walking, and they immediately go, oh god, he's really angry today. The idea, like they know their master so well that they can recognize that, I think is really fun. Anyways, Vasili and Anatole do show up. They somehow get through all the snow, and they don't like get a semblance that like things are wrong right away. They're just like, all right, let's see what we can do about this. I forget what it is. I think Vasili comes up with some excuse for why he's visiting. That's not just, hey, I want your money. Anatole, for his I was going to say to his credit, but that's not even really true. Anatole, as a reminder, is a hedonist, and he's also stupid. Luckily for him, he's also hot. If you've seen the musical, you know that's what they consider his defining feature. Anatole is hot! So he shows up, and he basically goes, I've heard that Princess Mary is actually really ugly, and I hope it's not the case. But even if it is, I'm also interested in getting a lot of money, so I'm okay with this no matter what. As we're investigating what else is happening in the Bolkonsky household, we check in on Lise, who's Andrew's wife, still pregnant. The pregnancy is taking its toll on her a little bit physically. In fact, she actually exaggerates this to the men of the house as an excuse to kind of hide away from Prince Bolkonsky, who still scares her, and she tries just not to interact with very much, especially if he's in one of his moods. Once the Kuragins show up, the women of the household, Lise and then Bourienne, who's a French woman who just kind of helps out around the household, they are pretty aware of, like, what's the actual goal here. They can read between the lines. They know. They've heard Anatole is coming with Prince Vasili, and they're like, well, we've heard Anatole's hot, so now might be our chance to marry off. God, that's confusing. Mary, for her credit, is really anxious and worried about the whole thing, and also, like, just hates Bourienne and Lise are just constantly like, what if we tried your hair this way? Well, what if you wore this dress? Oh, that dress doesn't look right. Great, let's take that dress off, put on another one. Oh, that dress works, but it doesn't work with the hairstyle we just gave you, so let's do another one. And Mary just hates all of that, and I relate to that so much. I've never loved shopping for clothes. The idea of having to try clothes on, and I might not like them, so I have to take the clothes off and put them back on again. Put my old ones back on, but then go looking for more clothes to then try on again. I don't like taking clothes off and putting clothes back on. And the idea that I might be doing that and then it's worthless because it doesn't fit or it doesn't look good, it annoys me to no end. It has since I was a kid. I don't know why, but I really feel for Princess Mary here. Anyways, eventually she's just like, guys, just leave me alone. Just give me a couple minutes. I'm just going to do it all myself. It's rare for Princess Mary. She's very, like, sweet and meek and kind. And at one point she just, like, very sadly goes, I need to be alone. And then Bourienne and Lise go, okay, yeah, we'll leave you alone. On her way out, Lise can't stop herself from being like, but you will change the hair, right? We need to do the other hair. And Princess Mary gets a second to herself, and we get a little bit of a view of her perspective on things. Tolstoy claims that she is just straight up ugly. The one distinctive feature about her is that her eyes are very big, and the eyes themselves would be considered beautiful if they were on anyone else. But yeah, Princess Mary is just not very, like, conventionally attractive. I don't think I mentioned this last time, and I know this is really silly because she's supposed to be ugly, but also, like, how do you even do that in, like, any movie? Because I think and this is a good thing, but I don't think there's almost any look where everyone will look at that and universally go, that's an ugly person. I'm going to cast Amanda Seyfried as Princess Mary in terms of, like, my fan casting. I know she's very conventionally attractive. I know it's silly to do that for a character that's supposed to be ugly, but I also think, like, it's weird to cast anyone for a character who's supposed to be ugly because then you're like, oh yeah, because that person is ugly. Like, I don't know, that just feels strange to me. I'm mostly casting Amanda Seyfried because I do think she has quite distinctive eyes. A lot of people, sometimes including myself, look at her and go like, why are her eyes like that? She's really pretty, but, like, her eyes though. But in a weird way, like, but the eyes also, like, add to the beauty in a strange way. I don't know. That's beside the point. We don't need to get into this. We're talking about the fucking book. Why am I talking about Amanda Seyfried so much? We get a moment of insight from Princess Mary here where she's thinking about the fact of, like, she really does desire earthly love. And by that, I mean romantic love, sexual love. She wants to have kids. She wants to live happily ever after with someone, essentially. But she's aware that she is not very conventionally attractive. And she also is part of a family that's, like, difficult to be around. Her father is really cranky and no one likes dealing with him. Prince Andrew is either off to war all the time or is home and also being kind of a dick. She knows that her prospects are not super great. So she's kind of resigned herself to option number 2, which is living a religious life as a bachelorette and just serving the Lord in the best way she possibly can. Not straight up being a nun, but, like, essentially living the nun life because she doesn't believe that romantic love is really in the cards for her. But now Anatole is here, and she's hearing all the rumors that people are going to try to get her and Anatole married, and that's freaking her the fuck out because she has just completely accepted this idea that even though she wants to fall in love, she doesn't think she ever will. So she's like, all right, I'm just going to prep myself for the fact that it's not going to happen. And now all of a sudden, what the fuck? It might be happening? Oh, God. And she's not... Everyone needs therapy. Especially the Bolkonsky family, but everyone needs therapy. Princess Mary needs therapy because she very clearly has, like, generalized anxiety. There's this thing that she should be excited for, and instead it is terrifying to her because of all the things that could go wrong. And also, oh God, what if nothing goes wrong, and then there's something else that I never thought would be part of my life? That's stressing me out. I hate it. But that's the end of chapter 3. Shit. You didn't see that. That camera angle didn't specify what was happening there. Oh no, there's a little more in the crease. Someone out there liked that. Almost everyone else hated it, but someone out there liked that. Anyways, Mary finishes trying to get herself ready, and then she walks down the stairs, and I love this detail. It's described that she is walking with the flat of her heels on the floor, implying that the idea of when you are upset, you walk on, like, straight on your heels. She has inherited that from her father. I just love, it's never brought up directly. I just love that little detail that both Prince Nicholas and Princess Mary both walk in the same way when they're upset. Princess Mary walks down the stairs, still feeling really stressed, still feeling really anxious. She sees Anatole and goes, "Holy shit, that's hotter than I was expecting." She's kind of blindsided by how attractive he is, and like all of those thoughts of anxiety go out the brain, simply because everything is dominated by, wow, he's hot. He seems dumb. He seems quite stupid, but boy is he hot, and boy is he self-confident. Anatole holds himself with this idea of, I know I'm hot, I'm sexy and I know it, and thus I am above everyone who's not as sexy as me, and so if I pay attention to you, it's because I have decided that you have earned it, and you need to earn it before I pay attention to you. That discussion is immediately followed by the quote, "Perhaps he did not really think this when he met women. Even probably he did not, for in general, he thought very little. But his looks and manner gave that impression." Everyone's just kind of staring and thinking about how hot Anatole is. Obviously, it's most relevant for Mary, because this is the marriage that might be getting arranged. But Bourienne is looking at this and also going, ooh la la. She's kind of had these fantasies in her head of like, maybe someday a prince will show up, he'll sweep me off my feet, and we'll ride into the sunset together. Now she sees Anatole and goes, "How good at you are riding into the sunset, because I sure would love to do that with you." Even Princess Lise, who for the record is married to Andrew and is pregnant with his child, is still appreciating the merchandise and going, oh, if I could, would. Then there's also a kind of a gross moment where we see Anatole's perspective, and he's looking over everything. Eyes kind of glaze over Lise on account of her being married, but sees Princess Mary, goes, oh, yeah, she is ugly, but she's rich. And then also looks to Bourienne and goes, ooh, I hope the French lady comes with the marriage. Which, in fairness, if Bourienne and Mary were both on board with it, that actually probably would be like a molecule that could work. But Anatole would ruin it somehow. I'm just like, that wouldn't work out. That wouldn't work out. I take it back. Anatole would ruin it. I don't even know how, but he would ruin it on like day 2. Anyways, while all the youngins are looking at each other and inspecting the merchandise, Prince Vasili and Prince Nicholas start talking shop. I forget what excuse Vasili even used to show up here, but he comes pretty much straight to the point. He cuts out the bullshit, just goes, hey, I would love it if Anatole and Mary got married. I think that would be great. Prince Nicholas, despite the fact that he is very rude and mean to Mary a lot of the time, does want her around. There's this weird relationship between the two of them, where Nicholas actually really doesn't want to give Mary up. He wants to keep her in his life at his house. There's a weird warped like love angle to, like, familial love angle to it, but it's also like a little bit abusive and a little bit like, oh, because she takes care of the house and I don't want to give her up, even though she's a young woman who should get to do whatever she wants. I'm selfishly, I want her to continue taking care of me. But a fascinating recurring element of the novel, even the people who have a ton of social power and are super rich and get to call all the shots, in a way that kind of weirdly will connect to another theme about the war that we'll explore later. There's this aspect of like, well, because of the society I live in and because of the way things are, Prince Nicholas can't just say, oh, no, Princess Mary's not available. He still has to follow the social rules that say, well, if Anatole proves himself to be a good boy and Princess Mary really wants the marriage, I guess we could make that happen. There's also a little bit of an interview between Nicholas and Anatole of like, let me see if he's a good dude. And he's basically just like, the war is on. Are you, attached to any detachment there? Anatole goes like, technically, yeah, I am. And Nicholas goes, okay, then why aren't you fighting at the front lines? And Anatole goes, well, because I'm because of the... And then he looks to his dad, because he can't remember the reason why he's not on the front lines. He's technically enrolled in the army, and he'll actually will take part in some of the battles. But you can tell A lot of the times, he's just hanging out at home. He doesn't have the same patriotic spirit that a lot of the other characters do. Because, yeah, he'll sit back and just stay in Moscow and Petersburg whenever he can. He may be a military man, which is points in his favor, but also, he's stupid. Meanwhile, the chapter ends with Lee's just going, wow, Anatol's hot. But both Mary and Borean are looking at Anatol, and they're imagining what their future could be like with this man. And both of them think they might have a shot at this. And Borean, I think, does realize, like, that would be messing with things we're doing with Mary, but, like, me and Anatol were vibing a lot more in that whole conversation. He seemed like he was not really that interested in Mary. And Mary, poor sweet girl, doesn't really realize that. She actually picked up on none of the chemistry between Borean and Anatol. She just sees Anatol and goes, oh my god, it might be real. I might actually get to fall in love and marry somebody and, like, live the life that I actually wanted. Which is stressful and anxiety-inducing, but also hopeful. This was what she's always wanted, and she never thought she'd get it, and now maybe it'll happen. And she doesn't realize that Anatol thinks Borean is way hotter, and that's where we end the chapter. Next chapter, we hear about how everyone is staying up late, nobody can get to sleep, everyone's stressing about exactly what's going to happen next and how things are going to go, and nobody can get any sleep. Except Anatol, who's too stupid to stress about any of this and sleeps like a baby. Mary is terrified that she might get exactly the thing that she wants, which is something that she's kind of given up on, and now she doesn't know what to do with herself. Borean is wandering the halls, hoping that after all those good vibes she was feeling, Anatol's gonna, like, come out and have a midnight tryst and maybe meet up with her. And Nicholas is super annoyed because he still doesn't want to give up his daughter, but he knows because of society or whatever, he has to at least entertain the notion that she might get married to Anatol. Anyways, in the morning, Nicholas takes Mary aside. Mary and Lise and Borean all read the vibes, but it was never officially said, like, oh, why is everyone here? What's going on? This is the point where Nicholas pulls Mary aside and says, okay, so Vasili wants you and Anatol to get married. And Mary, like, again, kind of knew that was coming, but, like, again, it's becoming more and more real to her, so she's freaking out every time she gets another step forward of, like, oh, it's real. Oh, it's real. Oh, God, it's real. Oh, God. And she's basically like, okay, I don't know if that's what I want, which is weird because it's exactly what she wants, but it's not what she feels like she should do. It's actually kind of a weird mirror of Pierre's situation, where Pierre is about to get married. He feels like it's weird, but the reason he feels like it's weird getting married to a Karagan is, oh, it's because the Karagans kind of suck. Even though he hangs out with the Karagans a lot, he does deep down realize of, like, oh, they're not great people. Mary's thing is kind of the opposite. She doesn't realize that Anatol is kind of a dick. What she does realize is, that means that everything I thought I wouldn't get in life, I will get, but I've accustomed myself to the idea of what I should do and what I deserve is this other thing where I never get married. And all of a sudden I'm giving up on that. The thing that I've accepted is my lot in life. It's freaking her out. So she's kind of waffling back and forth. And Nicholas, who, again, wants her to not get married, but also is aware of societally, he can't just say, no, I say that won't happen. He basically says, okay, Mary, just take an hour, get back to me, just think about it, and then when you get back to me, we'll get an official yes or no, but you just think on it for a minute. Which is, honestly, as far as Prince Nicholas goes, it's actually quite a kindly gesture. He's still cranky as he tells her to do this, but the fact that he is, like, letting her take a second is actually, like, more kindly than he usually is. So you can tell that, like, this is something he's really invested in. Despite the fact that he's very rude to Mary, there is a part of him that cares about it. I love... okay, let's get into it. I think an aspect of familiar relationships that a lot of media do not explore is a parent who is a bad parent, just straight up not good. Like, they do not have unconditional love for their children in the way that all parents should. But they still partially love their kid. There is still a part of them that does feel for them. I think there's a aspect of, like, oh yeah, if your parents suck, cut them out of your life. You don't need to have your parents, which I think for a lot of people is valid. I know there's a lot of people who do not grow up in a household where there are loving parental figures who care about your every need. Sometimes parents suck. I think that's very realistic, and I think it's very understandable as the kid in that scenario to recognize that and go, I don't need to deal with that. I don't need that to be part of my life. I think that's very, very valid. But I also think it's true that in a lot of those circumstances, the parents do still love their kids, just not as much as they're supposed to. And I think that's fascinating. I love that. I don't love that it happens in real life. I love exploring it in a fictional circumstance because I think it's a fascinating dynamic that a lot of media really goes all or nothing with, like, good parent, bad parent, no in between. And it's like, no, there's a wide spectrum of in between that I think is really interesting to explore. So yeah, here we have a moment of kindness that Prince Nicholas is showing to Princess Mary, even though, as we will see much later in the book, Prince Nicholas is a terrible father to Princess Mary. But we still have this moment, and we get these little bits and pieces of, it's like, no, he doesn't just hate her. It's not that simple. It's never that simple. That's why all these conversations around parent-child relationships are so charged. It's because it's never simple. And I love media that's willing to confront the fact that it's not simple. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyways, Princess Mary is like, okay, I'll take an hour. I'll think about whether or not I actually want to do this. She walks off, and as she's getting back to her room, she's kind of like looks down the hallway, and she sees Anatole and Borean are in an embrace. They might be making out. Tolstoy doesn't mention. It's clearly not just like a friendly handshake. There's clearly something a little bit more going on. Both of them notice that Mary noticed. Borean screams and runs off. Anatole goes, crazy, right? Am I right, Mary? I don't know what that was. That was crazy. And then Anatole just walks off. And Mary goes to her room going, okay, so there's more to this than I thought, and I was already feeling too stressed about this. Borean comes over to Mary and apologizes, and is like, oh my gosh, you must hate me. I feel so terrible about that. And Mary goes, no, I get it. It's good. We're all good. And Borean's like, no, it's not. We all know what's supposed to be happening here, and I'm messing that up. Like, I'm so sorry. There's kind of a weird angle that feels maybe not manipulative, but a little bit like Borean is like trying to scooch things in a certain direction. She's like, oh, it's just, you're so nice and pure, you don't understand what it means to be taken over by passion like I was. And Mary just goes, you're good. I get it. It's all good. I'm not mad at you. It's okay. She just kind of gives a sad smile and sends Borean on her way. Hour passes. She comes over. Vasili's just sitting there being like, all right, here comes marriage number 2. I'm going to get super rich after this one. Mary comes up. And she has decided to herself that her lot in life is what she thought it was. She turns to Prince Vasili and goes, hey, all due respect, thank you very much for the offer. It's a no. Prince Vasili is like, you mean not right now, right? Like just maybe in a couple of years, maybe one day, perhaps. What's time to go? Maybe something will happen. And Prince Nicholas is like, well, I'm so glad you guys came by, but I think it's time for you to pack up your things and head on out. But we get one more kind of look into Princess Mary's mind, where she basically has decided that not only is she going to live this religious life of a bachelorette because she realizes that, she is not meant to get married even though it's what she wants. She has decided the best way to serve God is to be as self-sacrificing as God was. And thus, I'm going to sacrifice all of my happiness because I want Anatole and Borean to get together. They clearly love each other, and I don't want to get in the way of that, despite the fact that, as a noble, it's what I'm supposed to be doing. Again, like, as is often the case, there's kind of a weird thing of, like, we in modern day can look and go like, oh, nobles shouldn't automatically be treated as better than common folk. Like I think most people agree with that nowadays. But it's at the time that the novel came out, I think it's quite transgressive for Princess Mary to go, oh, I'm a noble, Borean is a serving woman. It doesn't matter. She's in love, and I'm also a little bit in love, but my lot in life is to let other people be happy, even if it means I'm not happy. So I'm just going to put that aside, and I'm going to let them be in love, and I'm not going to get in the way in that, and that's the only reason I said no. And that's kind of where we leave things for the Kuragins and the Bezukovs in this section, and most of the Bolkonskis, although we'll, spoiler alert, check in with Andrew. Vasili's scheme foiled once more, although he's still doing pretty good because earlier in the book, he did successfully get Elaine and Pierre hooked up together, so that's going pretty well for him. He's got a nice little new profit stream going on there. I should do some updates to the board, honestly. Pierre and Elaine are definitely married now. That's a big to do. Pierre's got too much fucking shit on him. There's too many strings attached to this thumbtack. Nope, that pulled Pierre's thumbtack off the board. Okay, we got it. We're good. It's good for now. If Pierre makes a single other friend on this board, it's going to completely ruin the entire thing. How do people make these? Okay, again, I don't have the label yet, but I've added a new string between Helene and Pierre. They're now married. Everyone's happy about it, especially Pierre. Anyways, end of that chapter. I'm going to take one more sip of this, and then another sip of water. Hydrate, kids. Okay, we're done with the Bezukovs, we're done with the Kuragins. We're not entirely done with the social setting of Moscow and Petersburg, because we're also going to check in on the big old Rostov family. There's a lot going on here. We've got Count Ilya, who's the head of the family. We've got the Countess. She's depressed. She's sensitive to a lot of things. Everyone kind of treats her with, like, padded gloves. What's the I don't know. I'm too drunk to remember what the phrase is. But, like, everyone's just kind of, like, gentle around her. Natasha, who's usually our main POV, she doesn't get a ton of focus here. We have Sonia, the cousin. We have Vera, the best member of the Rostov family. We have Petya, who barely matters, and we have Nicholas, who is off to war, and that's going to be a very relevant fact here, because the Rostov family has received a letter from good old Nicholas, giving some updates on the things that happened in the last book. As a reminder, what happened in the last book is that Nicholas Rostov finally saw some action, and in fact, in the latest battle, his horse got shot out from under him. He, like, bruised his arm or sprained his wrist in some way. Like, his arm got a little bit hurt. But he, like, narrowly avoided capture. He was able to get back behind his own lines. Maybe with the assistance of Dolokhov. Again, fan fiction, Dolokhov was the one that saved him because it said that he was rescued by sharpshooters. He's doing all right. And in fact, because he got wounded in battle, he actually got a little bit of a promotion. That's, like, a weirdly consistent thing of, like, if you get wounded at all, even if it's just like, my head hurts. But it was during a battle, so I showed valor, and that means I get an award. That's honestly a lot of the ways you get promoted, apparently, in the Russian army. So, yeah, he's seen battle. It was dangerous. It was scary. I don't think he mentions the multiple panic attacks he had, but he's doing okay. Just one wound, but a promotion to come with it. Count Ilya is the first one to read the letter, and then the second one to read the letter is actually Anna Mikhailovna, the other kind of schemer who's a little bit... not quite as much of a scumbag as Prince Vasili, but very similar demeanor. Just kind of always being around, being like, hey, how could I get something for my family out of this? She's still hanging around. She's still kind of like, she might straight up be living with them. I kind of forget the exact dynamic. But she's still hanging around the Rostov household. And she basically goes like, okay, we all know how the Countess is like, which, like, I still don't understand exactly what the vibe is, but, like, she says it like everyone is on the same page. So she's basically like, we have to dip her toes in the water and get her used to the temperature before we tell her that there's a letter from Nicholas here, because otherwise she'll freak the fuck out. So we need to say, maybe at some point there's a chance a letter from Nicholas might show up, and just get her used to the idea that there's a letter coming. And Ilya's like, yes, this is true. We can't just tell her right away. We got to be careful about it. Natasha hears this and is like, okay, so there definitely is a letter from Nicholas, right? Because you guys are talking really, with everything you're doing is weird, and the only explanation for it is that there's already a letter from Nicholas and you're just being kind of secretive about it. Basically, she interrogates Anna Mikhailovna about this, and she goes, all right, yes, you're very clever. You figured it out. Yes, here's the letter from Nicholas. And she gets to read it, and Anna Mikhailovna is like, okay, but careful. We need to be sensitive about this. We can't just go letting your mom find out about this. So she goes, you can't tell anyone what you figured out. And the next sentence is, no, on my true word of honor, says Natasha, crossing herself. I won't tell anyone. And she ran off at once to Sonia. So, of course, she immediately tells Sonia everything, because they're best buds. And Sonia freaks out a little bit, because she's like, oh my god, Nicholas, my beloved. My cousin, don't forget, never forget that, but also my beloved. Natasha's very happy for Sonia that she feels so excited about this. The letter also contained a little bit of news about Boris, who, again, Natasha and Boris kind of had, like, a thing a little bit, but Natasha is like, I don't really, like, remember Boris that well. Like, yeah, we're friends, and, like, I get him, but, like, when I close my eyes and think about him, like, I can barely remember his face. I don't feel super strong about Boris. I'm super happy for you, Sonia, that you care so much about Nicholas. He's my brother, so obviously I remember Nicholas. But in terms of, like, people I'm in romantic love with, yeah, don't really remember Boris that much. It's kind of funny that you remember Nicholas so well. Petya, who, again, no one fucking cares, but I guess he's in the chapter and he has an input on things. Petya's like, oh, well, you know, that's just because you fall in love with everybody. I mean, you fell in love with that fat guy with the glasses, too. That's Pierre. We're talking about Pierre. Natasha goes, no, shut up. That's not what, you know, there's kind of this teasing that Natasha falls in love very easily and then falls out of love very easily as well. Eventually, after enough time, they tell the Countess, hey, there's a letter from Nicholas. She, I think, takes it pretty fine, like the news of it pretty fine, so either Anna Mikhailovna's plan worked or it was completely unnecessary. I can't tell what. But everyone gets to read the letter. Once the letter is read, the Countess starts like crying and freaking out a little bit and getting very emotional because of the fact that Nicholas got wounded, and is like, oh my god, what's gonna happen to my little boy? Vera, who, as a reminder, is one of my favorite characters in the entire book. Here's a reason why. Vera watches not only the Countess, but she gets crying, and then everyone else also gets crying of like, oh, poor Nicholas. And Vera looks at all that and goes like, the letter says he's fine. He hurt his wrist a little bit, and then he got a promotion out of it, and he's fine now. Why is this, like, upsetting? And then everyone, like, looks at her really upset and is like, Vera, you're harshing the vibes. And Vera shuts up, but she always keeps it real. I love Vera so much. As Anna Mikhailovna is, like, reading out the letter to everyone, there's a really fun description where she's very proud that she's been able to make sure that the Countess is accustomed to hearing the letter and getting used to the idea that there is a letter before just coming all out with it. Once this news is delivered, her face wore the proud expression of a surgeon who has just performed a difficult operation and admits the public to appreciate his skill. That's as she's like gathering everyone to be like, all right, she knows about the letter, let's read it now. I just love that description. Tolstoy is great with his metaphors. Basically, everyone decides to write their own letter back and just give their own little perspective on things and send it off. And then they decide, how do we get this to Nicholas? And I don't know if this is realistic. I don't know if this actually happened. I don't know if this is how you were supposed to do it back then. But they decide, let's just send it to this one other completely random military guy we kind of know. We are going to address the letter to the Russian guards abroad and think, like, that's specific enough. The whole military is in the same neighborhood anyways, so if we just send it their way, it'll eventually find its way to Nicholas. And just to make sure that it actually makes it there, they attach 6,000 rubles to it, just to make sure that anyone who's delivering it gets the job done. It's insane. You write a letter to your cousin in the army, and you just write, to the army. Please get this to Brad. What an insane ploy. There's no way it could possibly work. But that's where the chapter ends. Anyways, now in chapter 7, we're moving from the social circles of Moscow and Petersburg to the war. So that means we're going to be moving back into Nicholas's perspective, Prince Andrew's perspective. Oh yeah, Boris is also on the front lines. I mentioned that like there were some updates from him in the letter. All of them are kind of hanging out, trying to figure out what the next move of the war is going to be. Dólokhov's also around. But yeah, we're kind of moving away from the board. I might bring out the chessboard again, but it's harder to like give you that visual here. Whereas like I could just hold this up. If I had a magnetic chessboard, that would have been good, but it's too late for that. Anyways, war's going well. It is, I believe, November of 1805. Armies are kind of assembling here, and Russian and Austrian armies are working together at this point. Which, as a reminder, is not what Kutuzov wanted back in Book 2. He was like, it's going to be better if we just do our own separate things. But it didn't work out that way. Now they're on the same team. They were always on the same team, but now they're like working directly together and kind of they're tied to each other's strategic decisions. They kind of have to be always in lockstep with each other in order to coordinate properly. And in the midst of all this chaos and all the armies moving around from one location to another and all the different moving parts and the cavalry, which is different from the infantry, which is different from the artillery and all these different things moving around. What the fuck? The letter shows up. Boris gets the letter and is like, hey, Nicholas, I've got money for you that your family sent and a bunch of letters from them. What do you mean it worked? They sent it to the Russian guards abroad. That was what the letter said. Please deliver it to these people. And it somehow did get to Nicholas. What the hell? Anyways, the army has just reached one of its key locations at Olmutz. They know there's going to be an inspection tomorrow by both emperors. Let me make sure I'm getting this right because I don't think I have it in my notes. Alexander of Russia and Francis of Austria, who is also the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. In fact, there was like a weird political thing where like when Napoleon declared himself emperor of France, Francis, in order to, I might be getting some of these details wrong, but I believe in order to establish that like, oh, being the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire is above all of this because it's the empire that's blessed by God and it's because of the Catholic Church connection, everything, all that. He's like, oh, I'm emperor of Austria and emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. So I'm both of those things, which means I'm still a step above you. I'm still more important. Anyways, Both of these emperors are here. They're going to be doing an inspection of the army as they get ready for the next big military action that's going to happen. Nicholas meets back up with Boris. They weren't like already hanging out, but he gets this letter from Boris saying, hey, got some stuff from your family. And he meets up with them. Speaking of people in the family, they're also hanging out with Berg, who is Vera's husband. I'm pretty sure they're married at this point. I think they're already married. As a reminder, Berg's just kind of boring. He's just kind of there. Tolstoy wants me to think that that's why him and Vera get along. But what I know really happened is that Vera realized, oh, if I marry a nobody, I just get to keep doing my own glorious self, and no one's going to hold me back. You can't make me hate Vera. No one can. I'm not a Berg defender. Berg is pretty boring. So Nicholas shows up. He's friends with Boris, and he kind of wants to catch up with Boris. And so Boris and Berg are playing chess, and they're all kind of catching up a little bit. And then Nicholas goes, Berg, could you leave? I'm going to hang out with Boris now. And Berg goes, all right. Nicholas is very happy to show off all of his like dirty, ragged clothes. Might still have some bloodstains in it from the battle. He's very happy to show off how much hard work he's been doing on the front lines. He's also excited to read these letters. As he's reading through these letters, he's a little bit embarrassed and a little bit like bummed of like, oh, I mentioned that I got injured. It seems like I really stressed my family out. I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry about that. He's not saying sorry to Boris. He's just like, I feel sorry about it. And Boris is like, don't worry about it. It's fine. But then also in the midst of that, he sees a letter of recommendation that would basically turn him into an adjutant, the same kind of role that Andrew is in. And he sees that, and he immediately just like throws it on the table. He's like, that's fucking useless. I don't want that. Boris sees the letter. He's like, I love that. That sounds like it would be great, Nicholas. I think being an adjutant sounds cool, because adjutant is a position of power where you have a lot of say in what happens, and also you're not fighting on the front lines that much, which means you're less in danger. That is what Nicholas hates about the letter. Nicholas wants to be on the front lines. His idea of glory is being on the front lines, always having your life at risk. He thinks that's what matters most. But Boris, who is, again, that's Anna Mikhailovna's son. I forgot to actually mention that. That's the Drubetskoy family. It's literally just Anna Mikhailovna and Boris. They're social climbers. All they're about is just getting more and more power, whether or not it means being brave, being cowardly, doesn't matter. Whatever gets them higher up the ladder, that's what they're focused on. Eventually, Berg does come back. I think they sent him on an errand, essentially, and I'm pretty sure he read the room properly of like, okay, you two want to catch up. But also he's like, this is my tent. I can come back if I want to. And they all start catching up on a bunch of war stories they've done. And Nicholas starts telling the story of the battle he was just at. A Battle of Ulm. I've already forgotten what the battle was, but the one that was at the end of book 2. With the hill and the thing and the cannons at the top and, all that shit. Nicholas starts telling all these stories, and Tolstoy begins to describe the way that, like, Nicholas starts exaggerating things and maybe mixing the truth level around and adding in a little detail that maybe wasn't entirely true. It's similar to the willful ignorance I mentioned at the beginning. That idea of, like, when you're telling a story, you need to communicate how it felt at the time. And it felt like the most important thing in the world. But if you just describe what literally happened, the people listening aren't going to give a shit. So, in order to communicate the emotions you were feeling at the time, you have to exaggerate the story and bend the truth a little bit in order to make them feel the same way you did about the story. And the ironic thing is, it's never going to work. They're never going to feel the extent of the emotion you felt in that moment. But that's always what you kind of feel like you need to do when you're telling a story about this crazy thing that happened to you. It's not out of a selfish, like, malicious way of, oh, I'm more important than everyone else, I've achieved more glory than anyone else. It's truly just, how can I communicate how it felt? That leads to him not actually getting the details right. Partially intentionally, partially like he barely even realizes he's doing it. And I think it's just a really interesting thing that I think is very realistic. I think we've all done that. Tolstoy notes, it is very difficult to tell the truth, and young people are rarely capable of it. It's about this time that Prince Andrew shows up. Yeah, everyone's favorite. He's depressed and dutiful and a little bit of a dick, but he's working on it. He's getting better. He shows up and he hears all this, and he just kind of, he doesn't say much. He just kind of rolls his eyes because he was also at that battle and hears that, and he knows, like, I know what was happening on that flank. That's not how that went. He knows that Nicholas is exaggerating, and instantly you can see Nicholas sees that and is like, fuck this guy. I'm telling my side of the story, and he immediately comes in and is questioning it. Again, Andrew's not saying anything. He's just like, there's immediately like some friction between the two of them because they both can see each other for what they are immediately. And again, Nicholas thinks taking on an adjutant role that Andrew has is cowardly, and it's not what you should do if you really care about being patriotic and serving your country. You should be fighting on the front lines, putting your life on the line. He sees Andrew as a coward, and he's offended that Andrew would dare question his storytelling. Andrew's just here to check in. I think with Boris specifically, he's just like, hey, just like a meeting tomorrow or some shit like that. But he also is like able to tell how Nicholas is feeling. Nicholas is very vocal about it. Andrew kind of takes it on the chin, and he's basically like, hey, I've got more important things to worry about. As an adjutant, I'm actually in charge of how well this war goes, and you just kind of follow orders, and I do my thing. So I'm going to go do my thing. That's actually important. You know my name. You know what tent I'm in. If you want to have a duel, come find me. I feel like there's more important things in life. And he just walks out, which is honestly a baller-ass move. And in fact, Nicholas is like stewing over it for a little bit. And he's like, I really want to duel that fucker. But then deep down, he's like, but part of me wants to be friends with him too. What the fuck? And that's kind of where Lee thinks of Nicholas. Again, Adeline Cohen, he loves dueling. All he wants to do is duel. And that's the end of our chapter. The next morning is when the inspection's happening. They know that there's 2 emperors coming by who are going to look at everything. So everyone's looking. Their tip-top shape uniforms are polished, and everyone's looking perfectly fine. And everyone's very, very excited by this as well. This idea that the emperor is going to be inspecting them and keeping an eye on them and making sure that everything is up to snuff. Everyone's very, very excited about it, especially Nicholas. He's super hyped about the fact that he might be able to like show off what a good little soldier he is in front of the emperor. That's an astounding thought to him that he's very excited about. There's some 80,000 troops here, which is an insane number. The emperors do show up. Emperor Francis of Austria is kind of there, but everyone in the Russian army is excited to see Emperor Alexander, who's inspecting all the troops. As he's kind of waltzing by, there's kind of this, it's like the wave at a baseball stadium. Everyone kind of being like, yay, it's the emperor, yay, it's the emperor, yay, it's the emperor, yes, and like that just keeps getting closer until the emperor walks by, and then wherever you're standing, you're like, yay, it's the emperor, and then the emperor passes by, and you just hear that wave like keep going and going and going. Everyone's super hyped. The emperor is apparently young and good looking, and just kind of carries this regal aura about him, where everyone is just really excited to see him, and everyone's they feel very patriotic when he's around. Everyone's just kind of having a good time because everyone is kind of at their best. And the emperor seems very impressed by all of it. Nicholas, in particular, is super hyped about this. He's getting, like, borderline heart palpitations every time he thinks about the emperor seeing him. Quote from him, "Oh God, what would happen to me if the emperor spoke to me, thought Rostov. I should die of happiness." Nicholas's thoughts on the emperor we're going to get into further detail on later in this section. It's interesting. It's very interesting.
Who hasn't had gay thoughts?
There's a moment where Nicholas is kind of scanning all the crowds, and he sees Prince Andrew there, and instead of what in book 2, he would have gone like, that fucker, I'm gonna duel him in front of the emperor so that I can show what a good soldier I am. Instead, we get kind of the opposite angle of he sees Andrew, and for a second he feels that same hatred, and then he goes, but the emperor's fucking here. Nothing mattered. What a petty squabble I had with Andrew. We're all serving the same emperor. Why would I even think that dueling him would be worth anything when we're both serving the emperor? That's what matters most in the world. Everyone feels kind of invincible and feeling so surefire about the fact that victory is assured because look at who we're serving. Our hearts are in it 100%. Nothing could possibly go wrong. The end of book 3 is about the Battle of Austerlitz, as a reminder. At the end, Nicholas gets to do a fun, fancy horse trot in front of the Emperor, and he feels really good about it. Everyone's feeling super happy, and that's the end of the chapter. In the next chapter, Boris heads off to try and find Andrew Bolkonsky to try and touch base with him and try to get a feel for things. It takes him like a full day of looking through the village where all the higher-ups are staying in order to find Andrew, and then he sees Andrew talking with a general, and the general technically outranks Andrew in terms of military ranking. But because Andrew is an adjutant to Kutuzov, the commander-in-chief, the general that should technically be outranking him is like begging him for support and always like deferring to him. And Boris goes, "Oh boy, I wish I had that letter of recommendation that Nicholas threw out. Unfortunately, it has Nicholas's name on it, so I can't just steal the letter, but like, holy shit, I wish I had that because this is exactly what I want. I want someone who I don't care, like, technically where in the ladder I stand, as long as I, what's the, de juris, is that what it is? Rather than de facto. As long as everyone understands that I have more power than everyone else in the room, that's what matters to me. I don't care if I'm technically outranked. If people are coming to me to make the big decisions, that's what I want. So he's very happy that he gets to spend time with Andrew and talk with him a little bit. Andrew's like, oh, great, good to see you, Boris. I'm going to take you to go meet Prince Dolgorukov. I should have double-checked. There's a good chance this is a real person. I'm betting he is, but I didn't do any research into him, unfortunately. I'll put in... Here's some fun text about him. Andrew goes to chat with him. Dolgorukov has just gotten back from a council, and he's basically like, good news, guys. We are engaging with the French. We know exactly where it's going to happen. It's going to go great. And Andrew's like, okay, is that the tactical move? Are we happy about that because it's a surefire victory? And Dolgorukov is like, I don't fucking know. The main thing is that we're fighting the French, and we're probably going to win. You get the sense that Dolgorukov is not super, like, interested in tactics and strategy. He's more just like, fuck yeah, Russia, Austria, we're gonna win everything. That's what matters most. And Andrew's a little bit more cautious, and Boris is kind of like watching from the side, taking notes. Along the way, Andrew is able to read the room. He knows, like, Boris is here because Boris wants to social climb, and he wants to get ire, and he wants to get promotions. And Andrew's like, as an adjutant, I actually can't help you that much. If I get you in contact with Dolgorukov, he might be able to help you out. Just let me have a chat with him about the battle. Dolgorukov is very clearly, like, not interested in the specifics. We outnumber the French army in terms of, like, detachment of soldiers here. We know the territory. Battle's gonna go great. And Boris is like, cool. So here's my resume. Might be nice. I wrote this nice little cover letter for you. Here's what I can accomplish. And Dolgorukov goes, great, I will definitely keep you in our files. I'm gonna go do this cool battle shit. He's a little too lost in the sauce at the moment, and he's not gonna immediately be getting Boris what he wants. Chapter 10. So I've been talking a lot about this Battle of Austerlitz and how the fact that there's going to be a catastrophic confrontation between the Russian and French forces here. And so in Chapter 10, we actually get a look into this kind of conflict between France and Russia that's upcoming, that Dolgorukov was so excited about that he thought everything was going to go great. And it actually goes great. I'm not describing the Battle of Austerlitz. Haha, there was a skirmish that happened a couple weeks before that, and it actually went great for the Russian and Austrians. It was awesome. In fact, the worst thing about it is the fact that Nicholas is really bummed that he missed out on it. He was kept in the reserves. Him and Denisov are just kind of chilling and drinking because they're like, there was this really cool battle that we could have been a part of, but we were kept in the reserves, so we didn't get to do any of that cool shit. And they're just kind of feeling sorry for themselves for the majority of Chapter 10. A bunch of French soldiers get captured. A bunch of their supplies get captured. Denisov and Nicholas see a horse getting brought by that was captured from the French. And Nicholas goes, hey, could we buy that horse? That horse looks great. And they're able to buy it from the Russian soldiers who captured it. The owner of the horse, the French soldier who it belonged to, is like really stressed of like, okay, I understand. This is going to be my best impression of a French accent while I'm drunk. I understand that you captured my horse. Please take care of it. Please do not mistreat it, because I very much love my horse, and I just do not want it to be injured in any way. I think that's actually the best fucking French accent I've ever done. What the hell? What was that? What the fuck? That was actually not bad. Do I need to get drunk every time I want to do a French accent? How the fuck did I do that? Anyways, Nicholas buys the horse. He has a cool new horse now. That's the point of all of that. I don't know why I even went into all that. That was completely unnecessary, but I guess I can do a French accent when I'm drunk, and I'm terrible at a French accent usually. That was insane. Being kept in the reserves, Nicholas is still near the battle, and so he's able to like take a look at the aftermath once the battle is over. And you know who else is there? Is the Emperor. I keep calling him Emperor. He's also the Tsar. It's the same rank, essentially. The reason that Emperor gets used a lot here is because the Emperor of Austria, and Napoleon has declared himself Emperor of France. It's a nice little cohesive historical thing of like, oh, they're all emperors. In fact, the upcoming Battle of Austerlitz, is also called the Battle of the Three Emperors. But if I refer to the Tsar, that is also a reference to the same guy. It's the Emperor of Russia, Alexander. Nicholas sees this. He sees the Emperor's reaction to the battle, and it seems like Alexander's like earnestly moved by like the sacrifices involved in war. He sees injured soldiers getting carried off, he sees dead bodies, and he seems like kind of, upset about the fact that, like, yes, people die in battles, people die in wars, and it's a terrible thing that happens. And I think that's honestly an aspect of modern politics and modern warfare that is often, it's so easy for generals and high-ranking officials to sit behind a computer screen and just go, all right, we accomplished the mission, good job, everyone. It's actually very refreshing to read a story about the head of an empire seeing dead bodies from a battle that he like gave the okay to and going, that sucks. It sucks that people died here. That's a bad thing that happened. Yeah. Sorry, that actually makes me a little bit like, that doesn't happen anymore, and that's terrible. I think the world would be very different if everyone was able to acknowledge what it really means to take a life and how many of those lives are lost every time we drop a bomb somewhere. I just think the world would be different if we all really thought about that. Sorry. I'm filming this on the day we bombed Iran. And we killed 200 school children. Like, that sucks. That's terrible. And I think more people really need to think about that. Anyways, moment of humanity passes, and things just move on, and then everyone starts celebrating the fact that, like, hey, Russians won. That's like, yeah, it's sad that people died, but that's the important thing, is that we won. Denisov and Nicholas are getting super drunk. They're toasting the emperor. Everyone's kind of like in love with the Tsar a little bit. We're going to get into it now, because at the end of this chapter, Denisov sees how much Nicholas is freaking out about the emperor being there. Now, twice now, he's gotten to see the emperor in person and be like, oh my god, Emperor Senpai. And straight up in the text, Denisov says, as there's no one to fall in love with on campaign, he's fallen in love with the Tsar. We should get into it. Nicholas is gay for the emperor.
Who hasn't had gay thoughts?
It's one of those... this is not me trying to write a Tumblr essay about this. I think readers at the time would have read this and picked up on the homoerotic subtext of Nicholas seeing the emperor and truly having the exact same emotions that Pierre has about Helene, that Mary has about Anatole. The fact that all three of these are presented right next to each other in the same section of the novel. Nicholas is in love with the emperor. Straight up. Everyone makes fun of the, like, oh, they were just friends, when in fact they probably weren't just friends. When we look back on, like, the 1700s, 1800s, and that sort of thing. But sometimes it's literally there in the text, and I think it's fascinating. Nicholas's individual love for the emperor, it is framed as romantic, and not really sexual, but I do think romantic. It's very romantic toned. I think it does a very good job of communicating the loyalty of the Russian army to the emperor and the fervor behind how much everyone was into fighting to protect Russian interests and protecting the empire and all of that. But in a weird way, it's kind of that embellishment of, like, I don't think Tolstoy was in the middle of writing this novel and then he decided, oh, I'm going to have Nicholas be bisexual. What he thought about is, okay, how did people feel about Russia back then? How did the average Russian soldier feel about Russia? Well, they were willing to lay down their lives for it. Okay, I can write that in the text of just like, oh, by the way, every soldier was willing to lay down their lives. But then he goes, but that doesn't feel real enough. So he does the exact thing he does that Nicholas does a couple chapters ago. He starts embellishing it. And he goes, okay, most soldiers feel that way, but that's not communicating how intense that loyalty was. So let me rewrite it and reframe it as, here is one of our main characters who is in love with the emperor, the representation of Russia as a nation. Despite the fact that it is a queer dynamic, they're both men, like that's undeniable. The only way to communicate how loyal the Russian army felt and the average Russian soldier felt is to describe it as romantic love, because that's the only thing that almost universally everyone can go, oh, I know what that feels like. Yeah, there's people where I've met and I've crushed on them so hard or fall in love with them so hard that I would be willing to die for them. That's the only place where everyone's emotions have gotten to the point, like that threshold of like, here's how it felt. This is how much everyone was feeling those emotions. So that's the only comparison Tolstoy can make. And so he just says, like, almost directly on the text, like, yes, Nicholas Rostov is in love with the emperor because that is how it felt to be a soldier on the front lines at this point in time. This book's so fascinating. I love this shit. This is great. It's awesome. And it's gay. So many bonuses. Look at this. Look at us. Who would have thunk? Not me. Whew. I bet this guy's kind of exaggerating. It can't be that obvious that, like, it's actually romantic. It's probably just, like, some undertones that Tolstoy laid in. I forgot about another quote that I just refound. Nicholas sees the emperor for the second time, and he was happy as a lover when the longed-for moment of meeting arrives. Love... That's just... Tolstoy's just describing it like that. That's just what it is. It's undeniable. This book is gay as shit, and I love it. Anyways, that's the end of the chapter. Anyways, apparently the emperor falls ill a little bit. People say it's because he got so emotional seeing all those dead bodies that he fell ill. I'm not sure if that's true, but apparently the emperor started not feeling very well. That's right around the time that a French officer arrives saying, hey, let's talk some terms. Could I speak with the emperor, please? The emperor is indisposed. So instead, they send Prince Dolgorukov, that guy who Andrew was just talking to, who was like, let's fight the French. We just got to fight the French because we're the best people in the world. Yay! That's who they send in. So this will go well, right? We don't get a glimpse at, like, the actual conversation between the two of them. But Dolgorukov comes back and he basically goes, all right, so there's going to be a battle, and it's not going to be a skirmish like the last one. It's going to be a big battle. And again, we know the territory. We outnumber the French. It's going to go great. We got this cool battle coming up. And that kind of, like, news pervades throughout the army. A lot of us start getting ready for the battle. It's always surprising to me how often armies know when and where a battle is going to happen, down to the day, even if it's a couple weeks before then. The way I learned it always seemed like, oh, the armies were marching around and they happened to come across each other, and then that's when they fought. It's like, no, that's not really how battles work. That's not how war works. Anyways, the news kind of pervades throughout the army, and then Tolstoy draws this really big metaphor. I love Tolstoy's metaphors, of, like, the cogs in a clock starting to tick, of everyone, like, hearing the news, and then the gear shifts, the cog shifts, the news spreads to the next person. The next person is like, ooh, there's going to be a war, they spread to the next person. And it's not just the rumors of the battle, it's also the excitement of, like, all right, we're going to fight, we got to get ready, we got to get our stuff ready, we got to get hyped. And all the gears start turning together and interlocking. So many little tiny cogs and little pieces, and every once in a while there's one of those, like, little things like sh-ching, sh-ching, sh-ching. I don't know what that is, but, you know, all the different parts of technology that happen, all those are working together. And then there's this really interesting point where at the end of this extended metaphor, Tolstoy goes, and as a reminder, all a clock does is tell time. It doesn't decide what the time is. It doesn't have any bearing on where the sun actually is in the sky. It just reports back what the time is. And in a similar way, all of these people getting excited for 80,000 troops getting excited for war and being like, all right, here's the battle coming up. Here's what's going to happen. Here's all our strategies. Here's all of our different maneuvers we're going to make throughout the battle. All of that, it's not changing what's going to happen. It's just reporting what's going to happen. It's just preparing the thing that will happen. And there's, again, we'll get into it, I think pretty soon, not in book 3, but, like, in the relative future, Tolstoy is going to, like, stop the plot to begin, like, presenting his theories on, like, maybe the people making the decisions we're always going to make those decisions because they made those decisions based on the context of who they are. they thought they just fell out of a coconut tree, but they exist in the context of everything that came before them. There is an inevitability that Tolstoy is obsessed with throughout this entire novel, and this is one of our first, like, for a full page, Tolstoy just goes, all the gears trade together, all these things working together, all these things that appear to be individuals making their own decisions, but in the end, it all just leads to the exact same conclusion that was always going to happen no matter what. Fascinating. Love it. Anyways, Andrew goes to meet with Dolgorukov again. Dolgorukov is the guy who went and met with the French just now to get ready for this battle. And Andrew goes, all right, what's the game plan? What are we doing? Dolgorukov goes, well, we know the territory and we outnumber the French, so we're going to win. And Andrew goes, okay, so we have control of these hills, and I think if we extend the flank in this direction, and we make sure we keep in mind that Napoleon might not have his forces concentrated where we think we are, and Dolgorukov goes, don't worry, we know the territory, and we outnumber the French, and that's all that matters. And Andrew goes, okay, but, like, we're assuming that Napoleon is centered here, but if he's actually moved any of his forces over here, that actually is going to mean that there's part of the battle that we're completely unprepared for if we don't. We outnumber the French, and we know the territory. Everything's going to be perfectly A-okay. And Andrew just can't get through to the fact that, like, maybe we need to be careful and strategize when we're dealing with battles of this scale. And Dolgorukov, who kind of represents, like, many of the people in charge of the Russian and Austrian army for the Battle of Austerlitz, is basically just like, nope, we got it covered. This is a battle we're going to win. It's going to go great. We don't need to think any more about it. We'll get into further detail in a little bit, but, like, that's kind of the general vibe. Eventually, Andrew, stops talking with Dolgorukov, goes off and finds Kutuzov, who he trusts a lot because Kutuzov is a very experienced general who knows what he's doing.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
Hey, how do you feel about all this? I've got a bad feeling about this. And Kutuzov goes, yeah, I think we're going to lose this one, but I said all the same shit you did. I told them that we needed to be worried about this, we needed to be worried about that, and I just kept getting waved off. So, like, at a certain point, what are you going to do? And that's kind of where we end the chapter of just, like, it's very, this is dark because it's much more recent in history, but there was the guy before the Challenger explosion who identified, like, if the weather's bad, those O-rings are not going to function the way they're supposed to. And he tried to warn everyone to call off the Challenger launch, and everyone just went, no, the math checks out. We've done the simulations. It'll be fine. And then things went wrong in the exact way that the guy predicted. And how does that guy live through life now? Of, like, he tried to avert a disaster. He tried to save lives, and it didn't work because people just didn't listen to him. People who outranked him told him, you're crazy. Stop worrying about it. It's fine. Kutuzov and Andrew are in the same situation of, like, this feels bad. I don't think this is going to go well, but you can't do anything about it because everyone else is telling you to shut the fuck up, and you can't convince them otherwise, and they're the ones that have the final say. It's a really disturbing situation to find yourself in, and Andrew and Kutuzov kind of end the chapter having that feeling. Chapter 12 out of 19, I believe, so we're halfway through. We're getting there. He's probably showed up here and there, and I've just skipped over it. But we get fully introduced to Weyrother. This is a real historical figure, and I should have looked up how to pronounce his name ahead of time, but I'm just going to assume it's Weyrother. This is the chief of staff of the Austrian forces, so very high-ranking official in the Austrian army, who, for the record, Kutuzov didn't even want to have to deal with. He was like, we're on the same side of the war, but let's just go do our own thing, and that didn't work out, and now they're kind of forced together, and Kutuzov is forced to defer to this other guy, who has his own plan for, like, all right, here's everything we know about the French. Here's what we can assume about the French, in terms of their position on the battlefield and whatnot. And assuming all that's true, we'll set this flank here, we'll have this force up here on this hill, and this is going to go great. We're going to whoop their fucking asses. And it's a very complex plan that also jumps to a lot of conclusions. He's like, our intel suggests that this might be the case. So assuming that's right, we're going to put our entire section of this army, depending on that being true, we're just going to trust that's true, and we're going to go do this. And he does it like 3 or 4 separate times, and it's to the point that it's like his planning is it's not that he's not putting any detail into his plans. It's actually so complex that people find it hard to follow, but it keeps relying on, we think this is what's going to happen, and we should trust that as if it were certain. And we're not going to take any reservations, and we're not going to think about any idea that maybe things are a little bit different than what we expect. We just should assume that that's exactly what's happening. Very early in this meeting, Kutuzov, who we just heard is like very not on board with a lot of things happening here, straight up falls asleep. There's a moment where everyone goes, okay, he's just pretending to fall asleep to send a message. He wouldn't actually fall asleep. And then he keeps like snoring, and he eventually snores so loudly that everyone goes, oh, he's actually asleep. Uh-oh. But a lot of the higher-ups are like, don't worry about him. He's old. He's fine. Don't worry about that. It's fine. Weyrother just keeps explaining. And then one by one, we get varying degrees of like other higher-ups who are like, I think I understand everything that's happening. Explain the entire thing to me again. And there's other people who are like, this plan feels like it kind of sucks. And Weyrother goes, no, it doesn't. And the other people go, you're probably right. You're pretty smart. And things just keep on moving forward. One of those generals brings up the fact that, like, hey, we're jumping to a ton of conclusions here. Should we take any precautions for if maybe any of our intel is wrong? And Weyrother goes, no. Shut up. My plan is genius. Shut the fuck up. And Andrew is about to speak up and go, no. We should really rethink this whole thing. And then Kutuzov wakes up and goes, guys, I hate to say it. It is what it is. Weyrother came up with the plans. We're not going to change his mind. He's in charge, I guess. So this is what the plan is. Best thing we can do is get a good night's sleep. And there's a really, like, I think this is Kutuzov at some of his, like, weakest in terms of he's meant to be. I think Tolstoy has a lot of respect for him and really appreciates the work he puts into trying his best to lead the army effectively. But here we see him essentially just throwing in the towel and basically being like, oh yeah, what I say doesn't matter, what Andrew says doesn't matter. The battle's already lost, so might as well just get it over with and get some good sleep. It's a very, like, defeatist mentality. It's a very interesting moment from a character that you can tell Tolstoy has a lot of respect for, basically just giving in and saying, well, no, nothing to be done about it. Which ironically will help Kutuzov in the future, spoiler alert. But right now it feels terrible because we know what happens at the Battle of Austerlitz, and it's terrible. And the idea of someone being able to foresee the tragedy that's about to happen and going, there's nothing to be done about it, it leaves kind of a bad taste in your mouth. It's really, it doesn't feel good. But that's where we kind of leave things at the War Council. Kind of following up on this inevitability, the description that Tolstoy gives of Weyrother, the guy in charge of the plan, he's described as, he was like a horse running downhill, harnessed to a heavy cart. Whether he was pulling it or being pushed by it, he did not know, but rushed along at headlong speed with no time to consider what this movement might lead to. Even Weyrother himself, who is super proud of all the plans he's come up with, is just kind of throwing shit at the wall, and he's just like, well, it has to stick, because nothing else can happen. That's just what has to happen. And he's refusing to believe that maybe the Battle of Austerlitz might go badly for them. There's all this talk about everyone getting a good night's sleep, and Prince Andrew, unfortunately, cannot do that. He's just kind of pacing back and forth, thinking about, like, what the battle's going to be like. And the first thing he thinks is, like, well, we're all going to die, including me. I'm definitely going to die. I'm never going to see my family again. And he's thinking back on his life of, like, loving his family and the, like, really sad feeling of his memory of when he loved his wife. That's just a really sad sentence. There's no other way to put it. It's just really sad. Andrew needs therapy. But then he starts picturing, like, how the battle's going to go. And he's accepted that, like, there's no way this is going to go well. This is going to go badly. We're probably going to mostly lose, and things are going to go really terribly. But when I'm on the front lines, I might be able to come up with some clever scheme, and there's going to be some, like, regiment that's really starting to fail, and I'm going to be like, oh, but if we move in this direction, and we split ways, and we do all this, and I come up with a perfect strategy, I might be able to really, like, save the day in a really key way. I might be able to salvage this disaster in a way that is going to bring glory to the Russian army. And he basically has these, I don't want to say delusions, because he's very high-ranking, and he has a lot of say, and he is very clever in terms of, like, strategy and tactics and whatnot. But he has this imagination of grandeur of, like, oh, what if I save the day? It's like how I feel like this is universal, and I don't know if it is, because I've never told anybody about this or talked to anybody about this, but I feel like every guy, and that's not a gendered term necessarily, but I feel like anyone who hears the word guy and you're like, oh yeah, I count as one of those. Every guy, a lot of the times, when you're in a crowded environment, you'll think about, like, what if a shooting started? And your first thought is like, what would I do that would save the day, or at least save some lives? What heroic thing would I do in the situation of a shooting that would be super heroic and grand and incredible? Am I the only one? I don't think I'm the only one. I think a lot of guys think that, and it's like, it's a little fucked up because it's like, well, obviously we should just hope that the shootings don't happen because that's terrible, and we should take actions to ensure that as few shootings happen as possible. But there's always in the back of your mind of like, if something terrible were to happen, how heroic would I be in that scenario? Tolstoy's so good about identifying, like, here's a person in a really wild scenario, and the thing going through their brain is the same thing that has gone through your brain 10 times before. Of Andrew is just like, terrible thing. Let me imagine the terrible thing. Okay. How am I going to be the one that saves the day? And that's kind of how Andrew is able to lull himself to sleep, is imagining how he is going to be able to salvage things and even if not lead to a victory, being able to, at least on a small scale, do something heroic and glorious and win valor for the Russian army. As he's picturing it, he's also thinking of like, yeah, this is kind of what I want more than anything. In a weird way, like, he's happy where he is as an adjutant currently, but he's like, in a weird way, it echoes what Nicholas thinks, where Nicholas is like, being on the front lines is the most important thing. And Andrew has this moment of like, well, yeah, because having your life on the line and being able to do something grand in that moment is important. That is an incredible thing that you can do. That's kind of what Andrew is kind of thinking about, is he's like, oh yeah, I still want the glory and the grandeur, not even necessarily on a selfish thing of like, I want everyone to like me, I want everyone to respect me. It's literally the inherent fulfillment of like, oh, I accomplished something heroic. That's kind of what he is really hoping for in the battle to come, because he's already given up on the fact that they're probably going to lose. And I don't think it's selfish. I think there's actually a very noble aspect of that, of people want to be heroes. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool? I think that's actually pretty cool. And it's probably a little bit selfish, but the selfishness comes from, I want to help people. I want to be someone who helps people. I want that to be the label that is attached to me. Andrew Bolkonsky, who helps people. I don't know. I think that's a mentality that, like, if you go too far with it, can obviously get out of hand. But, like, a touch of that, a little dash of salt of heroism, I think we need more of that. And I really like that. I think it's a sign that, like, Prince Andrew is not, like, 100% okay in the head. We knew that from the start, but he is a good person deep down. He's not in this for the rewards and the recognition. He's in it for the personal fulfillment of, I want to do something good. Anyways, that's the end of the chapter. Alright, in the next chapter, you know who else is awake all night? Nicholas Rostov, who is still being kept on the reserves, and he's still really pissed off about it. He's on night patrol the night before when they think this battle is going to happen. Still feeling sorry for himself of like, the glory, I can't get the glory. And then Bagration popped up. This is kind of that badass from the last book. He was in charge of this ruse of like cutting off the French army, pretend you're the entire Russian army to buy time, just so that the rest of the Russian army can actually get to safety. Run a battle that should have gone so terribly for you, and then the fact that you actually are able to salvage it and not run to complete ruin was an incredible, not technically victory, but an incredible accomplishment. Badass but hard ass, again, is kind of the vibe that Bagration is giving off. He is here to inspect some things. He didn't even show up to that war council that every single high-ranking general was supposed to be at. He just didn't show up. In fact, like, they were waiting for him, and then one of his tenants came in and said, yeah, Bagration doesn't really want to be here. And Wayweather went, okay, that's fine. We'll just we'll do the plans. He doesn't need to worry about it. Fuck him. Instead, Bagration is here towards the front lines, and he and Nicholas both cite some, like, shouts, and they see some, like, campfires in the distance. And both of them are like, hey, we got told that the French retreated from that position, so why do we see and hear a bunch of things coming from over there? Nicholas pops up and he's like, yo, do you need somebody to do something cool? And Bagration goes, sure. And Nicholas goes, cool, I can go, like, scout out. I'll go grab my horse, my new cool French horse, and I'll go see what's going on over there. Bagration goes, yeah, a quick scouting mission would probably be smart. So Nicholas is super happy to get to do something cool. He rides up, he's on his horse, he gets a little bit close, and hears gunfire. And he realizes, oh, people are fucking shooting at me, oh shit. And he immediately rides back, and he's just like, yeah, the French are over there. They're definitely still there. And Bagration goes, okay, so we should definitely adjust our plans to make sure that we account for the fact that there's still a French army force there. So Gorokov is also there, the guy who's super hyped about fighting the French as soon as possible. And he goes, don't worry, guys. Our intel says that there's no French force on that hill right there. So obviously it's a little skeleton crew that Napoleon set up specifically so that we think there's still French there, but there's actually just like 5 guys. So we don't need to worry about it. We could just continue with our plans as usual. Bagration and Nicholas are like, but the bullets, there were more than 5 bullets that just got shot. We're pretty sure there's like a distinctive French presence there. Gorokov is like, we outnumber the French and we know the territory. We're going to win the battle no matter what. And so you feel Bagration is in a similar like vibe of Kutuzov of like, he also is aware this is fucked up. This is going to go real bad. But again, there's nothing he can do about it. He didn't even go to the war council. So his feeling is just like, when the battle starts, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm just going to do my thing the best that I possibly can. And that's how it's going to go. And Nicholas is over here going like, the French are super close by. That means I'm going to get to fight and kill people and be a good little soldier for Russia. He's as happy as a clam. In fact, having just been fired at and having bullets shot at him, he goes up to Bagration just like, hey, I was supposed to be in the reserves, but it'd be really cool if I could join your detachment and hang out with you and maybe get some combat experience. And Bagration goes, yeah, I guess an extra guy on horseback couldn't hurt. Yeah, come along. And Nicholas is like, yes! Maybe Emperor Senpai will finally notice me. In the meantime, I think I said last episode, like, I was comparing Napoleon to Thanos saying, fine, I'll do it myself. We get another, like, iteration of that here, where the reason there were a bunch of campfires and a bunch of people yelling that Nicholas and Bagration overheard was because a dictation from Napoleon was being read out to the French army, which, by the way, is definitely still in a high concentration at that point where the Russians thought they had retreated from. They were hearing this letter from Napoleon, who is taking direct control. He's assuming direct control of this battle, and is basically saying, like, hey, we have a plan. The Russians and Austrians have no idea what's about to hit them. We got this in the bag. And the French are celebrating because they, with a lot more knowledge than the Russians and Austrians do, feel very confident about the next day. This dictation kind of ends with basically Napoleon going like, hey, just because some people in your squadron get wounded, don't start retreating and being like, oh, we need to get the wounded out of here. Nope. Push onwards. If we all push onwards and we all commit to this, we're going to win this battle 100% certainty. Every single French soldier is even more committed to Napoleon than the Russians are to Alexander. They are all 100% sure this battle is going to go great. And spoiler alert, the French are right. Might be the first time in history that's been said, but that's beside the point. That's the end of our chapter. And in the morning, the Battle of Austerlitz begins, and it's bad. The first thing to note is that there's a ton of fog. Apparently the Russian and Austrian commanders forgot about weather for a little while.
Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet.
And so they can't really see anything. Napoleon has already thought about this ahead of time. He has purposefully positioned himself and a lot of his commanders on a hill that's much higher up, so they can actually see over the fog and they can overlook everything in a better way than all the Russian and Austrian commanders who are down lower, and can't get a feel of even like where their own troops' positionings are. That leads to a lot of confusion. You have some commanders who are realizing like, oh, our cavalry are spread too thin, we need to consolidate. So they like send the order to like, let's march forward. And then within a little while, they're like, oh wait, actually, no, close together. Like because of the fog, they can barely see like where each other are, so they have to like adjust their orders a little bit. But the cavalry is supposed to be near the front of the front lines, so when they need to like reposition themselves, that slows everything down. So already things are running behind schedule. At the back lines, everyone's like, what's going on? Things are going really slow. Things aren't going well. A lot of the Russians immediately go like, well, this is obviously Austria's fault, or this is obviously that German officer's fault. And they start like throwing the blame around. There's a prolonged argument between a Russian general and an Austrian general, and the argument between them takes so long that it just wastes very, very precious time in terms of like setting everything into position. Before a single shot has been fired, everything on the Russian and Austrian side is kind of a mess because everything is just going back and forth. And then we cut to Napoleon's perspective. He's just on top of the hill, overseeing everything, can see over the fog, and can look at the fact that like, oh yeah, this is how I expected things to be. Everything's going pretty according to plan. He has his eyes on another strategic hill that he's like, okay, once I take that position, I'll have pretty much won the battle. And he can see, oh yeah, the Russians are barely fortifying that position. They're in fact marching straight past it. And as I mentioned before, spreading a lot of their forces really thin because they can't actually coordinate very well. So he goes, okay, cool. I'm going to order the majority of my forces to close in on that hill. And just as a fun fact, that's also where Kutuzov himself is staying. So things are off to a great start for Napoleon and a terrible start for everyone else. That's the end of the chapter. It's chess time. I don't know how well this is going to go because the couch is the shape that the couch is. I guess I have some cushions I can use to add some terrain. But nope, they are not even visible, so that doesn't matter. I can put them on my lap, I suppose. Okay, as a reminder, French is white, Russia, Austria is black. Napoleon, King Napoleon, Emperor Napoleon. This is the Battle of the Three Emperors. He's on top. He knows that the fog is going to happen. He remembers what fog is.
Danny kind of forgot.
So he's overseeing the entire battle from up above, getting a better view on things. Marat, I believe, is the French queen, and I'm pretty sure he's here. I should have done more research before I started filming, but I'm too drunk to do research now. He is in charge of attacking a flank down here. I know this is off camera, but you just saw me put the French queen down here, so you know it's there. Napoleon has his cavalry, the two knights. They're going to advance on Pratzen. What the fuck is it called? Pratzen Heights. It sounds like a rich neighborhood in a suburb. It is Pratzen Heights. I was right about that. That's going to be this spot right here. I'm actually going to... Fuck. Shit. Fuck. This is Pratzen Heights. Kutuzov. French Queen is here. Emperor Alexander. Battle of the Three Emperors. He is here. He's not like on the front lines, but he is like around. That's a terrible angle because they're... There we go. Prince Andrew. Fuck. Was he a rook? I think he was a rook. Let's just say he's a rook today. He is also here. Nesvitsky, I don't know where Zhirkov is at. Nesvitsky is also here. Around. Nicholas Rostov is down here. He's engaging with like the Marat people. Again, I know that's off screen, but like, look, I am putting the horse down here. This is terribly uncomfortable, and if I move at all these pieces are going to fall off. So we're just going to see how long it can hold this. Napoleon realizes this a very important strategic position. Rooks, knights, cavalry, all sorts of shit is over on this side. This sucks. I should have thought about this more ahead of time. This down here is where the Russians thought the French wouldn't be. They thought they'd already retreated from the position, but actually Napoleon has a ton of people down here. So Napoleon is up here, and he goes, all right, so, oh God, there's like 5 chapters of this, and I have to hold this exact position. Okay, Napoleon goes, all right, send the word for the people over here to move up to Pratzen Heights, because this is an important strategic position, but they thought that I would never be able to capture it. So all these people, oops, there's a rook over here. There's shit. There's a rook over here. There's a knight over here. This battle went better for the French than it's going for me. The French did a good job of getting into position. The king is in check. The queen is in danger from 2 different sides, okay? I promise. In fact, I actually did a cool thing here that you'll never be able to see. There's a knight here that's either going to capture the queen, Kutuzov, or it's going to capture the rook, representing Andrew Bolkonsky. I'm a fucking genius, and you can't tell because this angle is terrible. Why did I think this visual metaphor would be useful? Anyways, Kutuzov is here, and he's having a bad time. Having a bad time. He recognizes this battle fucking sucks. Everything's bad. So he's thinking about, like, what exactly is going to happen next. And his mentality is like, if I send all the men I'm in charge of forward, they're all going to die. So, in fact, maybe the best thing for me to do is literally nothing, because that's the only thing that's going to, like, actually maybe save some lives by just preserving the people that I'm technically in charge of. Andrew is still looking around. He's thinking, he still is having those, like, again, not quite delusions. We'll actually get into it in a second. He puts his money where his mouth is. But he's thinking about, like, okay, this is bad. This is fucking bad. Everything's already going terribly. But what could I do to save the day? Surely there's something I can do to impact things here. And so he's kind of keeping an eye out for, like, what's the perfect opportunity for me to be able to save the day. Also, as I mentioned, the Emperor is around, and he's also trying to get a feel for things. He's talking to some other adjutants. Andrew has a really funny moment where he's looking at the discussion happening here. And he can't hear exactly what they're saying, but he's like, I bet some of them are asking what time things started, because he's thinking back to that time where he was talking to the Austrian emperor, and the Austrian emperor, like, couldn't think of, like, what important questions to ask, so all he could think to ask was like, oh, what time did the battle start? But yeah, the emperor shows up and is basically like, hey, Kutuzov, why aren't your men moving yet? And Kutuzov is like, I didn't know. I fell asleep at the meeting. I didn't know exactly what was supposed to happen. And the emperor is like, okay, move your guys forward, please. And Kutuzov is, like, trying his best to salvage a bad situation by basically going, hey, we should just do nothing and get ready for our retreat/surrender. But because the emperor is there, he can't really, like, feign that ignorance and that incompetence. And so he's kind of forced to go, okay, yeah, march forward, guys, even though he doesn't believe that this is the right strategic move in any matter. The emperor's right fucking there, and he can't say no to the emperor. So he's like, all right, yeah, let's move forward, fine. But he doesn't do it directly. What he does is like, okay, well, I have other battle things to attend to. I'm going to hand this off to my subordinate. If he says that they should march forward, then they'll march forward, but that's what it's going to be. And he's kind of stuck with that. Kutuzov is able to not wash his hands clean of the situation by any means. Walks off basically going, I don't think any of this should be happening, but it is what it is, and I tried my best to make do as well as I could with what I had. There's a brief paragraph about the Emperor's horse, and, like, from the horse's POV, we get to see what the horse is thinking. I had heard about Tolstoy writing from a horse's perspective, and I saw this paragraph, and I was like, is this that thing I heard about where Tolstoy talked about? No, apparently Tolstoy loves doing horse perspectives. He's written an entire novel from a horse's perspective. I read this, I was like, oh, is this the horse shit that I heard about? And it was like, no, this is a very, very slight snippet of the horse shit that Tolstoy got into, but he wrote an entire fucking book about this. Tolstoy fucking loves horses, and he loves thinking about what horses are thinking. I don't know why, it's great. I love it. We're on to chapter 16 here, which means we're actually getting sort of towards the end. But unfortunately, on my last sip, now I also am really starting to feel it, so we're going to be taking it easy, but I will be doing a very, very light refill on this so I can fulfill the promise of one sip per chapter. Book 1, I surpassed my limits, and by that I mean I vomited at one point, and I had to do that in that video in 2 sittings. In Book 2, I don't think I got drunk enough. I think I took it too easy. I think I'm finding the balance. I think this is it. I think we've got it, but we're not quite at the end yet. So I need to still I need to work on the extension here to see if I can end things properly. All right, we're on the Pratzen Heights. Kutuzov and Andrew realize we're fucked. It's bad. Nesvitsky probably also realizes that, but he only gets mentioned like twice in this section. He'll be fine. In fact, I'm just going to say he immediately retreats as a bishop. He's able to, like, go really long distance. I'm going to say he gets himself out of danger really quickly because he and Zherkov hate being on the front lines, and they'll get out of danger as soon as they possibly can. I'm going to say he's just off the board. He's safe. Kutuzov and Andrew are not quite the same. Andrew is a rook, but he's kind of boxed in. Boy, I put these pieces in actually a really good position. The queen is in his way. The king is in his way. He can't get out of range of a bunch of the danger he's currently in. But he does see there's this pawn represent. God, I'm so proud of what I have done here, and you can't see any of it. You just see, like, oh, there are some pieces. You can't tell how far away they are from each other. There's a pawn that's in danger of being captured by a rook and a knight at the same time. Andrew, the rook, could move forward to try and basically not necessarily capture any pieces, but basically get in the way and make it so it's more difficult to capture that pawn, because he sees an artillery regiment being taken over by the French, and he's like, oh shit, we need to reinforce that position right now. All this is like, they're on the hills, and as they keep like moving around, they're starting to retreat, and they're looking around, they're like, oh yeah, we kind of expected this, but we didn't know this for sure. The French are way closer than they're supposed to be based on the intel. Way rather completely misread every single thing about this battle. It's all going terribly. Kutuzov and Andrew kind of had their suspicions about that, but now it's fully confirmed. It's bad. It's bad. It's not going good. But Andrew sees this and he's like, this is my time. I'm going to save this artillery regiment, and that's going to save the day. As this is all happening, Kutuzov also like suddenly starts bleeding, and everyone's like, oh my god, Kutuzov is wounded. And he's like, very lightly, it's fine, keep moving, keep retreating, we got to get out of here. And he starts moving away to get out of danger. But Andrew, on the other hand, is obsessed with his idea of like, no, we're not just retreating, we need to be saving people as we're retreating. He's able to get in the way here, but as that's happening, another piece moves in and threatens things even further. The queen is able to retreat further off, but as that's happening, the other pieces begin to move around even further. The white pieces make their move. Andrew is like trying to reinforce position, but high-ranking commander yells out like, all is lost, everybody retreat, run away, and everything starts going wrong. And Andrew is like, okay, that's going to make it even harder to do anything. In the middle of the retreat, the flag bearer that represents like where people are charging, where they're maintaining position, he gets shot. So Prince Andrew, hero that he is, decides, I'm going to grab that fucking flag, I'm going to wave it, I'm going to charge forward, we're going to reinforce this artillery's position to save those people's lives. This is going to be my moment of glory. And he grabs the flag and he starts charging forward, and then instantly he gets shot and he falls over, and he's just like completely like can't even pay attention to his surroundings. He's looking straight up, and all I can see is the beautiful blue sky above him. He knows as he's looking up that some people heard him and saw him take up the flag and began charging with him. And he saw, as he was charging forward, a Russian soldier and a French soldier literally wrestling over a cannon. But now he's looking up and he can't move, and he can't even see who won that wrestling match. Did the artillery get reinforced? Did we win at least this little segment of the battle? Did we at least win victory here? He doesn't get to know. He can't move. He wishes he could know if his sacrifice meant anything. But all he can do as he's wounded and bleeding is just stare up into the sky. We did get through all this. There's 3 more chapters, which means 3 more sips of alcohol. I think anytime I make a plan for like what I'm going to be drinking and I do get through all of it, I have vodka. It should be vodka, right? It's War and Peace. It's a Russian novel. It's a complicated Russian novel. I want to commit to the bit, but I also want to like take care of myself because I think it's very important. I want to set a good example. So I'm going to pour like 1 shot worth of vodka that I will take over the course of 3 sips. And I think we'll be okay. 3 more chapters. I got this. It's just the most consequential event of the Napoleonic Wars up to that point. But just 3 chapters of it. We'll be fine. My favorite part of this handle. Certified gluten-free, baby! 3 sips. How well can I measure that? 1 sip. 2 sips. 3 sips. It's not impressive, but it's taking care of yourself, and I think that's important. It's straight vodka. That'll do. Wow, vodka mixed with nothing is bad. I don't know if that's a hot take. I don't know if that's crazy to say. Yeah. Wow. Has anyone heard about this? Don't do it. I might straight up start taking a sip of water, and then before I swallow it, take my sip of alcohol at the end of the chapter. I'll try 1 more sip straight for chapter 17, but then after that I may start mixing, not even with something flavorful, just with straight up water. Oh, God. Anyways, chapter 17, we have General Bagration, who I don't think I said last time, but I think he should be a rook. Queen and king are already taken, but Bagration is very high-ranking. So he's going to be a rook here. And he's thinking about how much this battle fucking sucks. Again, he was kind of with the same group as Kutuzov and Andrew of, like, knowing ahead of time that, like, the writing was on the wall and things were not looking very good here. So he's basically in a similar situation to Kutuzov. He's like, I don't want to do fucking shit. Anything I do is going to lead to people dying for literally no reason, so I should just basically do nothing. But Kutuzov, back on the Pratzen Heights, was like, okay, if I maintain this position, at least I'm doing something useful. Bagration, I will say, is like kind of like his like plans. They're not helping anything either. He's just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna sit here and do nothing, and then that's also not like not helping anything. Whereas Kutuzov, at the very least, was like defending a position by keeping his men where they were. But yeah, Bagration is in a similar scenario where it's like, I don't want to do shit. But I guess I should, so I'm not like demoted by the time the battle is over. I guess I should come up with some reason for why I'm not moving. So he basically goes, okay, because of the fog, we didn't know exactly how things were and where the French were positioned, so maybe the battle plan has changed. I need somebody to go try and find Kutuzov, and if they can't find Kutuzov, find the Emperor, and I just need someone to go find a person in charge, and then come back and tell me whether or not the plan is still in play. And as a matter of precaution, I'll just happen to not move my troops at all until I get confirmation that the plan is still on. That's Bagration's grand plan, is just like, I'm going to wait and pretend like I need one last little extra approval of like, yeah, let's do the plan before I do anything. And until then, my men are going to stay exactly where they are. So he's like, okay, I need a messenger to go across the battlefield. They're very likely going to die in the process, and I don't care if they come back or not, because every single part of this battle is a bloodbath, and trying to find the commander-in-chief and or the emperor will likely involve being on the front lines as you travel across the battlefield. No idea how this is going to go. I just need someone who is willing to die to pretend to be a messenger for me. Nicholas Rostov is so excited for the messenger duty. He's just been assigned. He's been told to go find Kutuzov himself, and if he can't, he can go find Emperor Senpai. Yay, we're so excited. Yeah, Nicholas is sent on this messenger mission that is essentially a suicide mission that Bagration does not assume he will even survive. It's not immediately clear if Nicholas even realizes that. It seems like he probably doesn't, because he's kind of blinded by the idea of like, I'm being sent on a mission to find the Emperor. And that's a really fascinating thing, is that's not technically what the directive is. The directive is find Kutuzov. And if you can't find Kutuzov, then try and find the Emperor. But every time Nicholas like runs all across and is like, hey, I need to find somebody. And they're like, who are you looking for? He'll be like, I'm looking for the Emperor. I definitely got sent to find the Emperor specifically, and only him. And he basically just like redirects his own orders to go and find the Emperor instead of Kutuzov. But as he's riding along, he's realizing he's on the front lines. He sees a bunch of other horses charging, and as he's like charging along perpendicular, there's a huge force of horses. He's like, they're about to trample me, and he just basically goes out of the way. He looks back and he's like, oh my god, the horse guard, the grand unit of cavalry across the entire Russian army. I'm so jealous of them getting to do heroics, but I have to go deliver this message to the Emperor. And like for a second, he thinks about like, maybe I should charge after them and be part of the battle. He rides off, and as he rides off, Tolstoy notes that everyone involved in this charge died instantly. They're all dead. Nicholas would be dead too. They're gone. But Nicholas keeps riding. We'll have Berg being a pawn. He's not that important. But he finds Berg, Vera's husband. That's the most important thing about him, is that he's Vera's husband. But he finds Berg and he's like, oh, yo, how are you doing? And Berg is like, oh, I hurt my hand a little bit, but I'm going to get a promotion. Surely I deserve a promotion because I hurt my hand a little bit. And Rostov is like, you won't believe the shit I just saw on those front lines. Anyways, I got to find the Emperor. Bye. And he keeps riding onwards. He's riding along and he hears gunfire. And there's gunfire. And there's people shooting at each other. And he's like, whoa, oh, holy shit. I don't even know where I am right now. The directions don't make any sense. Keep running through. And he like eventually overhears some people, and he realizes there's no French around at all. The French and the Austrians are firing at each other. There's a friendly fire situation. They don't understand what's going on. The higher ups are like blaming it on each other, being like, oh, well, the Austrian people didn't tell us that they were going to be here. Oh, well, the Russian people didn't tell us you were going to be here. A bunch of people dying for truly no reason. Like, there's a lot of, like, senseless death that happens in war, but friendly fire situations where it's simply just a misunderstanding of where troops are positioned are probably the worst iterations of just like, oh, those people died for no reason. Nothing noble or honorable about what happened. Just, like, a miscommunication happened, and they died because of it. And it's fucked up. And Nicholas is freaking out about that, but he's got to go find the Emperor, so he keeps moving onwards. Eventually, Nicholas Rostov reaches Pratzen Heights, where Kutuzov just was, but he can't find Kutuzov anywhere. He just sees a bunch of random unconscious and dead Russian soldiers, and he starts to look around and realizes, boy, there are also a lot of French people around here. I should get the fuck out of here. He keeps riding onwards. That's the end of the chapter. Yeah, that tastes bad. One time at a funeral, it was my grandma's funeral, which I think says a lot about my grandma in a really fun way. There was an open bar, and my brother asked, what straight liquor would you drink? And I went, probably tequila. And he thought I was crazy, and he challenged me. He was like, all right, I'm going to bring you just straight tequila, and you better drink it. And I did. And I stand by it. It's definitely better than vodka. It's definitely better than fucking gin. I'll tell you what the fuck. I know there's more liquors than those three, but, like, I don't know. Of those three, I'll take tequila any day over fucking these two. But vodka's thematically appropriate, so I'm drinking vodka, and it's bad. Anyways, Rostov's riding around. He's, like, asking around any Russian soldiers he can find, which there's not many, because he's right by Pratzen Heights, where the French forces are concentrating. He's like, hey, where's the Emperor? Where's Kutuzov? Anybody around? And the soldiers are like, oh, yeah, the Emperor ran away. He's gone. Rostov is like, but surely it was a tactical decision. My Emperor would never have just run away. Also, but even if that is the case, where's Kutuzov? And one of the soldiers is like, Kutuzov's fucking dead, dude. He's fucking gone. And there's another soldier who overhears that. He's like, he's not gone. He did get shot, but he's just wounded. He's okay. He's still alive. And Rostov is like, okay, well, which direction did any of them go? Just tell me anything. And one soldier is like, okay, if you take this way, you'll probably get to where the Emperor is. Another soldier is like, okay, but if you go this other way, you'll be less likely to die, and it'll also get you to where the Emperor is. And Nicholas goes, I'll take the first route. Why not? And he starts riding along, and he's kind of like thinking, the idea of like losing the battle is still not even a reality to him. He can't even think about it. The idea of like, oh, we're retreating, people are dying, that can't be the case. Even though he's seeing more and more evidence suggesting that like this is a complete disaster. And that's slowly starting to like grow on him and taking root in the back of his mind of like, this is bad. Things are bad. This is not good. There's a moment where he thinks about his letters from his family, and he's like, what would my mom think if she saw me like this? Cannons pointed at me, muskets pointed at me, about to die. And that starts to like really get the adrenaline going of like, oh, having my life on the line means I might die. We've talked a lot about heroism already, but like that young dumb feeling of like, oh, I'll be able to accomplish all these things because there's no way I'm actually going to die. This is the first moment where he goes, oh shit. At any point that I'm trying to do my cool heroic things, I could just get shot and die. And again, he had panic attacks in book 2. Like, this is not the first time he started to come to terms with his mortality, but he's starting to feel it again. And he's has this mission of find the Emperor. Again, not technically his objective. It's a secondary objective if he can't accomplish the first one. But Kutuzov is so far from his mind right now. He's like, gotta find the Emperor, that he is still able to like just keep pushing past it and avoid one of those panic attacks again, because he's just like, if I just keep moving forward, I'm gonna get there. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna succeed in my mission, and that's gonna save the day. I just keep moving forward. And eventually he gets to this field that's removed from the battle. It's a little village. It's a little Napoleon's dead, I guess. I just killed Napoleon. He fell off of a hill and died. But the Battle of Austerlitz is still going badly. So Rostov is trying to find the Emperor, and he eventually comes across this pasture that's a little ways away from the battlefield. And he can still hear the gunshots in the distance. It's not super far away. But he sees a figure, and he's like, whoa. That's... First off, he could recognize it's a man. And he goes, that person's really fucking hot. Who could that possibly be? And he looks closer, and he goes, is that the Emperor? It couldn't be. He couldn't be alone. And the funny thing is that he's not alone. There is like an adjutant or some other assistant there with him, helping him out. But Nicholas is thinking about it. He's like, fully alone? Me and the Emperor? It couldn't be. It's too perfect. And he starts like getting very like bashful and nervous by the fact that like he got sent to send this message to the Emperor, and he's finally there. And The scene is perfect. Again, it's very similar to Pierre's reaction to Helene of like, the situation is perfect. Pierre's like, this is the time to propose. Nicholas is like, this is the time to prove to the emperor what a good soldier I am, and how good I am, and how I am setting myself apart from my peers, and really get him to like notice me and consider me as an individual. And much like Pierre, Nicholas is so nervous and bashful that he's like, I can't do that. I couldn't go in and like do something and be special to the emperor. That couldn't be me. I couldn't do that. But since Napoleon's dead, we'll say different hill, but Nicholas is at the top of the... That reads better on camera. Nicholas is at the top of the hill, and he sees the king down here, and the king's just chatting and trying, like, not king, he's the emperor. It's a different thing. It's a different rank. The emperor's down here, and he's just, like, resting. He's away from the battle. He's safe, but he's exhausted and tired and stressed. And he sees another officer come by because Nicholas is too nervous to come and talk to the emperor. And the soldier basically says the same thing of like, hey, here's how the battle's going. Here's where everyone's at. Last we heard, Kutuzov got wounded. He's out of the battle. Things are going really badly. The emperor is like nodding along and doing all that. And Nicholas is just watching from the bushes, basically going like, it could have been me. And he gets really, really jealous of this random officer who just showed up to accomplish the same task that Nicholas was set out to do. Also, again, not really the task Nicholas was set out to do. His job was to ask Kutuzov, hey, is the plan still on? But that was hours ago. The plan doesn't matter anymore because the battle's practically already lost. But Nicholas still had this idea of like, I was sent to maybe as a plan B, find the emperor. And he finally got here and he couldn't do it. And now he's really jealous that he was not brave enough to go forward and deliver news to the emperor in the way that this random officer was. And so he's just looking on jealous. But the battle is kind of drawing to a close here. And at the very least, from our perspective as a reader who do care about the Rostov family, we get to see that Nicholas seems to have survived the Battle of Austerlitz. He's just sad because he didn't get to kiss the emperor on his pretty little lips. And again, that's barely subtext. That's basically on the page. To quote when Nicholas first sees the emperor, but as a youth in love, trembles, is unnerved, and dares not utter the thoughts he has dreamed of for nights, but looks around for help or a chance of delay and flight when the longed-for moment comes and he is alone with her, so Rostov, now that he had attained what he had longed for more than anything else in the world, did not know how to approach the emperor, and 1,000 reasons occurred to him why it would be inconvenient, unseemly, and impossible to do so. And later on the same page, better die 1,000 times than risk receiving an unkind look or bad opinion from him, Rostov decided.
Who hasn't had gay thoughts?
Anyways, from this moment of like kind of melancholy recognition that the little guy, like Nicholas Rostov, the people on the front lines, are never going to get the recognition they truly deserve from the higher-ups, represented by the emperor in this case. Kind of allegorical viewpoint of soldiers in the army. We're going to cut from that to the very, very harsh reality of the rest of the soldiers who are retreating from the horrendous military position they have found themselves in. We find a lot of soldiers in the midst of a bridge, this choke point. This is the only place of retreat. Most of the Russians and Austrians are in full retreat at this point, just trying to get away from this battle, trying to get away from the massacre. Much like in Book 2, anytime there's a choke point of people trying to have a bunch of military try to get through one position at once, it's one big old traffic jam, which in the midst of a battle means a bloodbath. On that narrow dam, amid the wagons and the cannon, under the horses' hooves and between the wagon wheels, men disfigured by fear of death now crowded together, crushing one another, dying, stepping over the dying, and killing one another, only to move on a few steps and be killed themselves in the same way. Most of these deaths are simply because of the force of people trying to get through a small space all at once. They are crushing each other and smothering each other. All the while, there are still muskets and cannons firing at them the entire time, which is causing more of a panic, which is causing more of a crush, which is causing more and more death and destruction. It is, I think, the most haunting and disturbing scene of the novel yet, because there is this sense of there is nothing you can do. You are trapped between bodies on one side, bodies on another, bullets and cannons flying at you, and if those don't hit you, you will be suffocated by the crushing force of people behind you and in front of you, trampled upon, and the people who trampled on you are going to find themselves in the same situation a few minutes later. Ugh, it's terrifying. Eventually, Dolokhov, who we've checked in on a couple of times, he's good friends with most of the Kuragins. He's a badass, but he's also really selfish. He's here on this bridge, feeling like he's going to get crushed, but he's right by like the side of the bridge. It's technically a dam, but damn bridge. It's by a body of water. And he looks out and he sees like it's December. It's the middle of winter in Europe. He sees that there's a ton of ice here. Ice is readily available to us. Oh, shit. If I jump onto the ice, I might be able to just, like, run to the other side of the dam and beach is fine. So he jumps out on the ice and he, like, takes a second. He, like, realizes that, like, okay, ice is holding so far. I think it's going to be okay. Everyone sees Dolokhov do that. And that's when everyone goes, everyone onto the ice. The ice is safe. It can hold our weight. We need to get going as soon as possible. And that is the worst possible thing that could happen, because the ice can hold Dolokhov's weight. It can't hold the weight of 10 horses and a cannon and hundreds of other soldiers in a panic trying to get off of this dam as soon as possible. There's this rush of forces that all rush into the ice, and immediately the weight starts crushing through the ice. The cannons keep firing, and that's when the cannons start also hitting the ice and breaking through the ice, and a bunch of soldiers fall into the water and start drowning. And for the record, if you're close friends with me, you already know this. I think the worst possible way to die is falling through ice into icy water and then trying to swim back up, but the ice is already frozen back over and you can't actually get back out and you freeze to death underneath a sheet of ice. I think that's the worst possible way to die. And a lot of soldiers go through that. Spoiler alert, Dolokhov makes it out okay, but there's a lot of soldiers who just fall to their deaths. If they don't get shot by the cannonballs, they fall into the ice and drown in the icy water. It's a horrendous way to go. If you've seen the Napoleon movie, I haven't seen it, but I've seen clips of it. It seems like the way that movie framed it in this moment, like Napoleon lured all of the soldiers in the midst of their charge onto like an icy lake and then broke through all the ice. And like the soldiers didn't realize, like, oh my god, we didn't realize. No, they had maps. They knew what a dam was. They knew where the ice was. They didn't get jump scared by ice. This isn't Chicago. In fact, by some reports, Napoleon might have tried to drain the lakes and the rivers in the area to make it so that there just wasn't that much ice around. It's a little bit unclear. Some of the like higher ups and generals were like, no, that shit really did happen. It's unclear if it was a strategic decision on Napoleon's part. It probably wasn't really. It was probably maybe an afterthought of like, oh shit, they're retreating on the ice. Well, let's break the ice. Like that might have happened. It's not like the majority of the Russian forces died in this way. But it was still like a horrendous thing that happened of like, I do believe, yes, there were some soldiers who probably tried to retreat onto the ice and then the ice broke and they all drowned in the icy water. That probably happened, and that is really fucked up. But that's the end of the chapter, and that's basically where the battle ends, but we do have one more concluding chapter before we end things here. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's not Malort, but it's bad. Whew. Shit, I should... Bingo! Napoleon is alive. We have not rewritten history this day. Our last chapter focuses on Andrew, who is not dead, but he is wounded. He has a terrible headache as he... Careful, Andrew. He has a terrible headache as he comes back to consciousness and has an awareness that like he is probably bleeding to death right now. He is not looking good. But he's still just looking up at that sky and thinking about that, that just feeling of all I can see, all I can take in, all I can really register is this grandness above me that has nothing to do with the battle around me. He's still here on Pratzen Heights that has been completely taken over by the French. And who should he come across? But Napoleon himself, who comes to kind of survey the battlefield and look at all the wounded. And as he sees everyone, he like talks about, he talks a good game of like, oh yeah, they fought really hard, you know, they did a really good job defending what they thought was right, but they couldn't stand in the way of the Grande Armée. But you can tell part of it is like he's mostly patting himself on the back for a job well done, because to his credit, this was one of the most impressive battles of the war. Like I mentioned at the beginning, the French were considerably outnumbered, and through a good combination of tactics on Napoleon's side and blunders on the Russian-Austrian side, managed to secure a devastating victory. That's a phrase that doesn't really make sense. a resounding victory for the French and a devastating defeat for the Russian and Austrians. That makes more sense. But basically, yeah, Napoleon's looking over everything. He sees Andrew with the flag and is like, oh, what a grand sacrifice he's made. And then Andrew goes, and Napoleon goes, oh shit, that guy's alive. I guess take him to the medical tents. And Andrew is brought into some French medical tents with a bunch of other captured soldiers. This was a really interesting dynamic of old-fashioned warfare that you don't see very often. But capturing prisoners of war, it was good. That's soldiers that are no longer fighting for the other side. But that also means you're kind of, I don't, like the Geneva Convention hadn't been signed yet, but there's still an understanding of like, okay, you should take care of those people. Like, you shouldn't just let them die. That would be really fucked up. So there's kind of this battle of resources of a lot of times if someone gets wounded in a battle where your side is losing, you just leave them behind, not because you don't want them to live, but because you're like, okay, the other side's going to overtake this territory, and then they're going to see, ooh, a prisoner of war, and then they'll be like, well, now we got to spend a bunch of medical supplies keeping this person alive. Especially if they're important, like an adjutant, like Andrew. He's very high-ranking. He's like equally political figure as he is his military figure. So it's like, oh yeah, that's a really valuable person to keep alive because that's useful for negotiations and like trading prisoners of war. It's really good to capture as many people as you can, but that also means that like you have to be taking care of them, you have to be putting resources into them. They're less useful as a dead body than they are as a prisoner. So Andrew is taken to the medical tents. Andrew kind of falls in and out of consciousness. He's still trying to get it together. Eventually Napoleon comes into the medical tents too, and he continues to just kind of humble brag. He's basically just like, oh yeah, you guys, you really gave it your all. Great job. It's like when somebody who's like really good at a sport or game challenges you to it and then kicks your fucking ass and then is like, GG. It's like, no, it wasn't a good game because you were way better than me, but you still are going to say that because it's the nice thing to do. You know, it's that sort of thing. Andrew, who up until now has actually like really respected Napoleon. He hasn't agreed with him. Obviously, he's been like, I'm going to fight Napoleon. We're going to be at war with each other. He's very aware of that. But he's just like, oh yeah, Napoleon's a genius. He's clearly like advancing the ideals of his nation, even though they go against ours. He's like, he has a lot of respect for Napoleon as a leader. As he's like, hearing this whole conversation, he's thinking to himself, and he's thinking back to the fact where all he could see was this grand sky and nothing else. And he thinks to himself, wow, none of this shit fucking matters, does it? The war doesn't matter, Russia doesn't matter, France doesn't matter. Everyone's gonna die, and some of us are gonna die in more fucked up ways than others. Like, what fucking matters anymore, dude? He sees Napoleon, and he, like, this second time, who's congratulating himself on how good he did at his battle job, and just like, why did I ever look up to this guy? Yeah, he's good at his job. So what? Bunch of people died. I'm probably gonna die. I'm bleeding out. I recognize that. I'm probably not gonna survive this. What the fuck even matters anymore, dude? If you remember, this was very brief, but there was a point where Princess Mary, his sister, had this icon, this religious icon, put it around Andrew's neck and was like, please let this protect you. And Andrew was like, yeah, who fucking cares? And Andrew was still wearing that icon. There's a point where the French like take it off of him, and then they're like, he needs it more than we do because he's bleeding out and he's probably going to die soon. They put him back on him. And he goes, I wish I could believe in the God that Mary believes in. This God that is truly good and is looking out for all of us. And it's very black and white. Things are either good or bad. You're either serving God or you're not serving God. And those are the two lifestyles you can lead. In this moment where he's facing his own mortality, Andrew is like, okay, but I do believe in something. I'm not an atheist. There's he just feels this innate sense of like, there is something else here, but it's not God in the way that Mary envisions it. I wish that was real. It would be so easy if that was real. But Andrew has seen warfare. He's seen the front lines. He's seen people die. And he's seen how many people die for the sake of petty politics. And he goes, that's not how God can work. And he's thinking back to that point where he was just looking up at the sky and it was all he could see because he couldn't move and he was just bleeding out thinking he was about to die. He couldn't even see if any of his efforts of self-sacrifice, of heroism, of any of that mattered. He didn't see if the artillery got reinforced and if they were able to hold the position or if they immediately all got slaughtered. None of that mattered. There is a great all or nothing. That's the phrase that Andrew uses for what he sees as God. There's an all or nothing out there, and morality barely matters. There's just this overseeing thing, looking over everything, and it overshadows everything. Nothing else matters in comparison to it, but there's no discussion of godliness or being evil or anything like that. Humans just do what they're going to do, and none of it matters in the face of the grand sky above him, which to him represents the all or nothing. We're just kind of left with that because this is in the middle of Andrew bleeding out and eventually falling unconscious. His brain is not fully with him. He's just trying to register the idea of, like, I wish I could believe in a black and white morality, and after this experience, I know that's not how it works. But I do still believe there's a greater power that's overseeing all of this, and in the grand scheme of things, nothing matters in comparison to whatever that is. But I don't understand what it is. No one can. It's almost, he views God as this eldritch entity that no one can truly fathom, instead of the kind of like more, from his point of view, simplistic view of God that his family has, and that a lot of people in Russia had at the time. And as he falls into unconsciousness, we shift perspectives one last time to the French, specifically the French doctors, who look at him and go, okay, this is an adjutant to Kutuzov. He would be really useful as a prisoner of war. But he is bleeding really badly. We don't think he's going to survive this, and is not worth spending medical resources on. He is probably going to die. Now, we can't just kill him. That would be inhumane. But we have our own job to do. We have our own military positions that we need to fortify. We won this battle, but we are going to keep moving forward. The French army is going to keep moving because the goal is to keep moving forward. That's always what the French army does. And spoiler alert, the French army does that until it can't anymore, and that's when the French army completely falls fucking apart. We have to keep moving forward, and we can't waste resources on this guy. So we're going to leave him behind. We're in this nice little village of Austerlitz. Most of the civilians, I assume, evacuated for the sake of the battle, but like, there's still a bunch of buildings that people live in and call home. Let's just leave Andrew here. And let's hope that the people of Austerlitz will take care of him as best they can until he bleeds out and dies, because the French army has better things to do. And that's where we end Book 3. Prince Andrew, bleeding out, dying, and from his perspective, alone, in the face of a godly entity that doesn't care about him, that doesn't care about anything. Not morality, not good or evil. And yet, in its grandness, matters more than anything else in the world. And that's it for this episode. Whew! It's one of those things where it's like, you take the final sip and you're like, that's the final sip. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, there's still technically liquid in there. You're not going to be able to see from this angle, because if I angle it, it'll pour out of the cup if you see. But technically, okay. That's all. We got it. We got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. I forget exactly what happens in Book 4, but next time we will see the consequences of the Battle of Austerlitz. They're bad. Russia is not in a good spot. Austria is not in a good spot, to the point that it's going to completely remove itself from the war. The Holy Roman Empire is gone. But that's where we leave things. A battle so catastrophic for the Russians and Austrians that people thought that the apocalypse was on its way, and Napoleon was the harbinger of it. The war continues to go badly for the Russians and Austrians, but hey, at least things in Moscow and Petersburg are going well. I mean, Pierre is married to Helene, and everyone's really happy about that. I mean, Vasili is really happy about it. But obviously, that's not a great thing. But, like, let's check it with everybody. We have the Rostov family. They're stressing out about Nicholas and the fact that he's always on the front lines. But, like, that's going fine, right? Nicholas almost died just there. And we have, you know, Nicholas and Mary, who are also bad. They're just doing bad. Everyone's just kind of doing bad. Everyone here's doing bad. Except Prince Vasili, because he's getting a lot of money. I think that's all I've got. The Battle of Austerlitz was bad for the Russians and the Austrians. It sucked. It's terrible. I think I emphasized that enough at the beginning. I think that's all I've got. Okay, bye. I'm going to do a bunch of poses for the thumbnail now.
How did I live? I taste every wasted minute every time I turned away from the things that might have healed me. How long have I been sleeping?
Every time I look down at my crotch, I promise it's because the book is here. It's just very slightly out of frame. I'm not just like looking down for no reason. It's just because I could re-angle the camera, but that would ruin the whole thing. So it's going to stay the way it is. So I need to be more conscious about like raising the books. But like it's in my lap here. I could just rest it on my legs. If I do this, it gives my arms a workout. Don't get me started on the fucking pull-up bar, okay? I keep trying to put a pull-up bar, but my fucking doorways are too narrow for any fucking pull-up bar to fit any of them. So I don't give my arms a workout, so I shouldn't be complaining. I should be happy about the fact that I have the opportunity to put the book here. But there's the microphone right there, so if I hold it here, you can't hear me as well, can you? Can you fuckers?